Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Saturday. First day of SOC 100. Becoming a SOC Analyst. Let's do this. Let me get my screen set up. Oh, should be a little bit easier to see now, I think. How's everyone doing? On the other screen there. Cool. How's the music? Let me know if it's too loud. I'm trying to adjust it so that it isn't too crazy, but need a little bit of background music going on. Frank is pumped. Can't hear it? Okay, let me bring it up a little bit. Maybe a little louder now? Maybe too loud? Looks a little too loud. Cyber Green, welcome. Bangladesh, cool. Across the pond. Happy to have you here. Everyone else too. Starlight, Karina, Frank, KSJ, Life Fast, Cyber Green. Actually, that was you. Just kind of go up the list right now. Drew's here. CI, Doc. Got a lot of people inside here. Kim Fried. I think we got about 30 viewers. I think a couple more kicking in as well. TT Crosses. Good morning. Good stuff. A lot of people here. Cyber Saiyan, Wit Husey, Shane, Mal, Malanthrope. Yeah. Pack Chat. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. If you're in the Eastern Coast, good morning. If you are on the West Coast, good early morning to you. You're probably just having yourself a cup of coffee right now. So, good to have everyone here. Let me know at any point if the music's a little too loud or if my mic's kind of clipping in and out or whatever. I've got I have a noise gate on it to make sure that you can hear just me, but trying to block off all the normal background fan sounds and everything. If you're no coast, I don't know. Where are you? Where are you? Are you in cyberspace or are you just up in the air somewhere? Mal, fall 2021. Alumni. Wow, welcome. Metaverse. Cool. What dimension Flavor States represent? Nick. Way back. Playback. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to have you with us. Hope you're doing well, man. Get my coffee ready over here. So should be a good time. Who's here from SOC 100? And who's here from just passing by? I think it's pretty much SOC 100 crew, but cheers to morning coffee, everyone. Without burning my mouth. Nice. Whole bunch of SOC crew. Good stuff. A lot to cover. Curious to see how this format goes. You know, I'm open to feedback as we go through it as well too. It's the first time we're doing this, so I appreciate everyone being here and being part of this. We're gonna make this like a live class. You know, I'm gonna pay attention to chat as much as I can, and then feel free to help one another out as well too. Don't wait on me. If there's something you call out or you can catch, feel free to help one another. That's the whole point of this. And I'll try to answer as many questions as I go, and we're just gonna just imagine this to be like a pretty casual, chill instructor stream on a weekends, kind of walking you through stuff and at a nice pace. We're gonna take our time explaining things and try to give some good examples and analogies. KSJ, so quick question, Anthony. I'm near finishing my cyber degree and currently working in the field with some security tools and duties. Should I still be taking the fundamentals courses? I think I will know lots of info already. Honestly, KSJ, I think just about anybody could benefit from these fundamentals courses. The name is a little misleading. So like, let's go take a look at the Level Effect website, right? Take a look at the course series of what this is. And like just this alone, I think go through the curriculum and, you know, I think obviously some of you are going to be a little bit ahead, but we're starting right from the beginning of Windows and we're moving through, but we're going to get all the way to full enterprise domain management. We're going to get group policy set up. We're going to get automated deployment, package management. We're actually going to put you through help desk. So you're going to have a lot of, not a lot of things. You're going to have Kerberos analysis inside of here. We're going to be setting up and troubleshooting the various issues that users run into. There's quite a bit, and this is just SOC 100-1. We got a long way to go through it. So if there's anything that you're a little rough around the edges over here, you could benefit. And if there's anything you haven't seen before inside the field, which I'm going to probably wager some students probably haven't seen some of this stuff. Even if you're inside the field right now, have you actually inspected Kerberos? Have you actually pulled up Wireshark to see what it looks like and kind of get a packet level to understand what's going on? Have you set up secrets management? Have you set up a DC, DNS, DHCP? A lot of good stuff inside here that we're going to get to. So that's my answer, you know, and for just about everyone listening as well too, not just KSJ, but go through the curriculum and kind of skim through the labs of what we're going to cover. There is something for everyone here because cybersecurity is a subset of IT. You got to have your IT nailed down. Oh, you mean the other, so the legacy fundamentals? No, you could stop those because that stuff's actually going to be included inside of the SOC 100. So for anyone that has legacy access, you can leave that alone if you'd like. We're going to cover through that. I'm going to walk you through today. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Cool. So, first things first, I should say welcome everyone. Welcome to SOC 100-1. This is becoming a SOC analyst. That's what this is. So I changed the stream to say that. This is day one in becoming a SOC analyst. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take you from the basics of the operating systems all the way to triaging tier 1 SOC analyst tickets. And we're going to do this over the span of just about 5 months. So we've got a long way to go. It's going to be weekends and there's a lot of work to do along the way. For those of you that are new here, we are here on the Level Effect website and we're going to be doing the SOC 100 course series. The first course is released right now. And this is a pretty beefy course. It's actually made up of 5 courses, or rather 4 courses and 1 certification. And the first one we're going to be going through today and through the next couple weeks is SOC 100-1. Cash is saying, I'm currently working as... So KSJ, it's 89 labs just for SOC-1. We haven't even got to all the stuff ahead of this. So 89 labs to go through with all of you, just for the first course. So Cash, you're currently working as a SOC analyst. Yeah, it's really good to learn the fundamentals because I think you're going to see as we go through this that a lot of security is really just good IT. It starts with that's where it all begins. If you nail that, the rest of security is going to be a lot easier for you. Otherwise, you're playing a ton of catch up. Cool. Okay, so first things first, for all the students that do have access, you should be inside of your SOC 100 course right now today. If you don't have access, that's fine. You can follow along. And if you want, you can go and hop on the website, grab the course for 19 bucks. But otherwise, we are going to stream it. It's going to be accessible for video for anyone that can't afford it. And you can kind of watch it and learn by osmosis. But, yeah, kind of go from there. CI, I thought the end date was Feb, but now the page says March. We gave you more content. we gave you more content. I would say, so expect the schedule. Where is the stream schedule anyways? Up here, right? So here's the actual stream schedule. We're going to be doing Windows for the first couple sessions, Linux networking. This is all SOC 100-1. And then we move into SOC 100-2. And then we go into -3. And this is where you actually start working inside of your virtual SOC. And then we're going to give you some time to go through the certification. So you're going to have about 2 weeks to go and do your certification. Please do it. It's going to be a good challenge. And then we move into all the advanced stuff. So we have more instructors that are joining this whole initiative. And they're adding more content to it for all of you. So that's why we're going into March now. We have defensive scripting coming up later, DevSecOps and cloud security, reverse engineering, threat hunting. We got a ton of stuff. Abe251, does $19 include all 5 courses? No. It's $19 minimum, pay what you can per course. Per course. The certification is going to be a little bit more because you actually have to present. So if you are looking for a certification, everyone, that you can just do a multiple choice test and get away with it like the Security Plus, not happening over here. Sorry. You're going to have to do some practical work on that certification, and then you're going to have to do a report readout to me or one of the other guys. Or we might have some stand-ins as well, too, to kind of help out. But you have to present your report. That's how you get your certification over here. You have to actually present your report to one of us and walk us through your analysis and why you found what you found. So it'll be a good challenge. And quite different, I think, than the Security Plus. Which is good in its own right. Not knocking it. I grabbed my Sec Plus way back. I think it has some good use cases. But it's one piece of the puzzle. Mr. Me seeks to say, yes, the fundamentals are great. 4 years in cyber and improve some areas while... Yeah, exactly. Cool. Good to hear. So yeah, just let me know if the music's a little too loud. I can bring it down. Maybe a little bit. Looks like it's piping up too much. So let's go. Cap City Gaming, first time chat. Welcome. Your anxiety is so ready to present live for the cert. Yeah. I feel you, but we're going to do it in such a way that we want you to do a lot of talking. We'll kind of give you some good requirements and keep it strict. We don't want it to kind of just you saying whatever you want. We want you to go in a format, and we're going to teach you how to present in that format and walk it through, and we'll give you feedback. That's what that certification's for as well. It's not just, hey, you're done. We'll give you feedback on ways to improve and be better moving forward, but verbal communication and articulation of your technical knowledge is incredibly important in cybersecurity. I mean, IT as well. You have to remember that at the end of the day, all this technology is to provide a way or a means for a business to grow faster and utilize technology to do it. So we're providing that technological service for our end users and then security and cybersecurity, but communicating the value, communicating patch time, downtime, changes in software and use cases and different security policies and why it's important, that's all verbal communication. Even written communication is applicable there too. So there is quite a lot of documentation and presenting and getting buy-in and understanding from your employees, your peers, etc. So that's why we included it. We do want you to be able to present and explain why you found what you found. And we're going to talk about why that's so important over here. So cool. Well, let's jump into it. So SOC 100-1, we're going to kind of go quickly through the intro to make sure everyone's set up. They understand the expectations. This is a little loud in my ear. Here we go. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm not going to read all the sappy stuff at the top over here, but effectively, we've been around for a while. We've been doing this for, geez, coming up to 5 years soon, next year. We've been training students for a while. We've been in the live training landscape, which has been, it's been really good, but that's a little cost prohibitive for quite a lot of people when you're dealing with thousands of dollars for live training programs. And so this past summer, we've been able to get to an on-demand training, and this is how we're here today, being able to do this and provide something accessible and affordable and as a nice entry ramp into IT inside of cybersecurity and find your way in the field and see if this is for you. And having an instructor help you and walk you along the way and provide some guidance and some answers. So long story short, that's kind of how we got here, and we're quite committed to it. Now, a couple things that I want to talk about today before we begin are 5 really important points. For those of you that are new, or those of you that have started, you know, Cap, you're mentioning about a little bit of anxiety. Well, I think you will feel uncomfortable. This is a very new area for a lot of people, and being uncomfortable is an indication that you're exposing yourself to something that you're unfamiliar with. And that's really how you learn. If you're just doing the same thing day in, day out, you're not really learning anything, right? Like you're just kind of, you're on repeat. You're kind of on autopilot. And sure, you might get better at your day-to-day duties, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, if you want to grow and you want to be able to do more with your time and provide more value in what you like to do, getting uncomfortable is the first step. Now, how long you stay uncomfortable is a bit of a different story. And that's why we have what we're doing here today, is to kind of help you move through that uncomfort and find your way in your groove. Because, you know, we've noticed that students can sort of get lost in tutorial land. And you can go through a lot of different courses back to back. You're buying this course and that course and hoping that they all stitch together. Or maybe you've paid for a very expensive course and it didn't really lead you anywhere. It's happened as well too. And that is why we're also doing this too, is we're trying to provide you a nice comprehensive curriculum to take you from the very beginning all the way to the end and be with you along the way. So expect uncomfort, everyone, as we do this. That's fine. All good. Next thing that we really encourage around here is, this actually, you might have heard this as like the learn, do, teach model, or SODUTO or SODOTO, however you like to say it. This is also like in medical school, neuroscience and such. This is the concept of see once, do once, teach once. We heavily encourage this. If you really want to learn something, try teaching it. That's going to make quite a difference when you have to explain it to someone and give examples and analogies and try to put yourself in their shoes and have some empathy along the way. Stun. Is it possible to enroll into a particular module or previous modules needs to be completed as a prerequisite? Like, it's possible to enroll? Yes. Yeah, so Stun, we're going to have SOC 100-1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all separate for that reason. And we're going to be releasing each one through this schedule over here. Take a look on the website. You can see the exact dates, and that's when things are going to be popping up. So, yeah, we encourage, as you go through this work, and whether you go through the course or not, if you want to start really sharpening your IT skill set, this is huge in tech. Learn something and then try to explain it to someone. And better yet, try to explain it to someone who is not technical. That's when you're going to see some gaps in what you know and what you don't know. Another thing is that your pace is your pace. You're going to see students in here, like Stun's mentioning that they're interested in starting in -5. That's fine. Some of you are going to start in -1. Some of you are going to start right in the middle. Some of you may just start right ahead. Maybe you want to go and start on CDA, or maybe you're ahead of things. You're just kind of here to brush things up. That's fine. What's most important is that you're making your own incremental gains. Like, look back over a day, a week, a month, and see what you've done for yourself. That's what's most important. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. Who here feels like they have imposter syndrome? Or has had it? Yeah. Yeah. Feeling that? That's... Yeah, there we go, right? Everyone's just... Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's feeling it. I felt it when I first started as well, too. Yeah. So, imposter syndrome. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, how this happens really is when you compare yourself to others, or compare yourself to what you're trying to learn, and you feel a very large gap, like a very large disparity in what you should know, or what someone is suggesting you should know, or what you think you should know by your own comparison. This sort of helps you kind of reflect back on this, that your pace is your pace. So step one is to understand that it's okay to know as much as you know versus what others know and what you think you should know. That's the first step. The second step is to pause and evaluate, why don't you understand, or why don't you know or feel comfortable with what's in front of you? And I think what you're going to see, especially inside of like if we're talking cybersecurity and more advanced content, if something's not making sense, it's probably because the basics and your foundations and your fundamentals aren't solid. That's really it. It means that you don't know enough of the prior material that makes what you're looking at or what you're in front of make sense. And if you think about it, if you've ever tried to read like a very academic book or like a high level language or technical documentation, and you're reading it, you're like, I don't understand any of this. And truthfully, that's just because you don't understand what those words mean. You don't understand like the terms and definitions and where they all fit. Maybe a more technical example would be if you're trying to secure an account, like maybe like a user clicked on something they shouldn't have, right? And then it compromised their workstation. And you're trying to figure out like how that happened. Now, if you were trained kind of well enough in the beginning and you kind of went through it, you'd have a good understanding of how the operating system works, the user accounts, policies, permissions. You could immediately click right away what's going on. But if you don't understand, you can't explain why that workstation is compromised, it's because something before that that makes up that situation is missing. There's a gap in the knowledge. And that's what that second step is. Evaluate where your gaps are. What are you not understanding about the situation? And you have to step back. You have to go and find what those things mean. And for those of you that are maybe into the gym and stuff, it's kind of like you go to the gym and you try to go and lift a couple plates. Maybe you try to do a big deadlift or a big bench press, right? You try to lift something really heavy and you can't. You just can't, because you haven't built up the strength to get there in the first place. Same thing. You're looking around and everyone's stronger than you. Maybe you go to a track, everyone's running faster than you, and you're like, oh, this is not for me. It is for you, but you just have to take the time to get there. And then the third thing is balance. Imposter syndrome really comes in when you're imbalanced. And that could mean that maybe you're overstudying things, or you're not spending enough time on certain areas, which ultimately, this goes towards, this becomes burnout. The more you feel like an imposter, like when you go through this syndrome, imposter syndrome, you'll eventually meet burnout, because you become so imbalanced that things start to sacrifice in your life. And it's a known thing in tech. So this is not a field to rush through. This is not a field to go and study over a weekend and then convince someone for a job offer on Monday and then walk in the office and have no idea what to do and say, hey, I'm feeling imposter syndrome. And then you catch up for weeks and you finally burn out. This is how this happens inside this field. And I think what's most important to understand is that cybersecurity really is a subset of IT. Really need to hammer that home for everyone listening. Your IT knowledge has to be nailed down really, really well first to be effective in technical positions in this field. So start with the basics, and that's what we're going to do. Last thing is that learning requires immersion. If any of you speak a second language over here, if you've learned it, or did you learn it by reading a dictionary? Or were you slowly exposed to it? You put on podcasts, shows, you heard people talk and speak, maybe went to language lessons, you read a bunch, you kind of just like threw yourself into it. And cybersecurity is really no different. We're going to be exposed to a ton of technical jargon, a ton of technical terms and definitions that we're slowly going to stop trying to reference things so much in a generalized English sense as we go through this. Because if you did that all day, you'd never get through the content. So what we're trying to do is compartmentalize terms and definitions down into single words or acronyms to expedite that ability of talking to one another and transferring information and knowledge back and forth. So you have to immerse. And Yarden, Sam, you're saying exposure and immersion? Yeah, so what we're doing today, and we go through this, SOC 100-1, this is your exposure. The more all of you are talking and chat with one another, hanging out in Discord, you're all immersing after that. So, incredibly important. So these are kind of 5 things that I think, inside the chat, a couple models for everyone. There you go. Your 5 initial golden rules before you begin all this stuff. So, cool. Real quick, so like why SOC 100 and kind of why we're doing this. I mentioned a little bit about it, but we have kind of like 5 approaches based on one thing. And this is that we've seen a lot of students kind of finding us and looking to our training. I've had students come over to us that have spent about 14,000 and up, 20,000 on universities, boot camps, and a lot of them were built off of the Security Plus objectives, and it kind of just felt like you're walking through PowerPoint. We've had that. We've had quite a few students come our way feeling a little bit shorted, and then we've had a lot of students find us through course after course. You know, they're bouncing around between different vendors and different platforms, hoping they can stitch together a curriculum, and they just get stuck in this like tutorial land. So we try to make this a very consolidated, comprehensive curriculum. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to do this new model of you invest, we invest. So if you're willing to spend a little bit and go through the training and you like it, we'll invest into you. So on your next course, you can go ahead and pay later, like back in March in the future, and we'll credit you back what you pay for this. So if you spend 19 now, we're going to take that off you when you buy some future content, kind of thing. And we have like an army of instructors over here. So if you kind of go through the SOC 100 course series, there's it kind of goes on for quite a while, but this is all of us. And a whole bunch of contributing instructors that kind of stepped up on all of this. And maybe you if you want to hop on this and help out. But we wanted to make a bit of an army. And ultimately, we wanted you to be ready for more. So let's go down to the curriculum itself. After you've gotten through your IT skill set and the security training over here, we wanted you to be prepared with advanced fundamentals, which is kind of a weird thing to say. Advanced fundamentals, but the fundamentals to advanced content. That's what we wanted you to be exposed to towards the end. So then you know where to go after. If there's anything you want to study and take further content and training, at least you're going to be set up. And then finally, last thing is that experience is important. It's especially in today's market. And I mean, I'm still seeing that. I'm still seeing boot camps out there that have a job guarantee in this market. Don't like that. I think that's really misleading. I really do. And we're in a market right now where the supply and demand has flipped. And we have people with 6 to 8 years of experience still having some trouble, depending on location and such, getting into where they're trying to get to inside the field. So what we're trying to do is also provide you a means of experience. And if you're going through the content and you're training, you can go and put a junior SOC analyst on your resume. And you can go throw a little resume bullet after you've done that. There's some expectations of what to do, how to actually help others, but you can go put this on your resume after that. You are a community junior SOC analyst at Level Effect, and you provide a technical support and such. So we're trying to provide everything you need to get started and walk you along the way. That's what this is, and we're not trying to gouge you for it. A couple questions in chat. Give me a second here. Let me take a look. What's going on? So, can you talk about where CDA falls in line with the SOC courses? Well, take a look at our training roadmap. And you can see how SOC 100 teaches you the IT. SOC 200, SOC 100-2 teaches you the basics of cybersecurity analyst triage. So this is where you're actually going to do some malware analysis and triage. And then you're going to learn digital forensics and incident response and resolve tier 1 types of tickets. So a lot of like email things and clicking and URLs and HTTP kind of base things and some light malware analysis on endpoints. Basic tier 1 stuff, you know, like an IP or a URL or a domain. It's kind of flagged, it's anomalous. For you to kind of do a quick false positive or is this like an actual incident we have to investigate? So you're actually going to get some work as a SOC analyst inside of a virtual SOC. And then you go through the 1 week certification to really demonstrate that you can do this and present it to us. And then finally, we get you ready for the advanced training. So that's kind of where it stops. Now, what CDA does, CDA is actually part of the SOC 200 because we're trying to train you up to a SOC tier 1 analyst level. That's what SOC 100 is. We're trying to get you to become a SOC tier 1 analyst. SOC 200. So CDA is advanced. CDA is actually part of SOC tier 1 to 2 and up. That gets much more nitty gritty. And I'm not sure if there's any CDA students inside the room, but there's quite a bit that we go deep into. That's much deeper analysis on network, endpoint, log and event, and triage. Very deep. You actually start to get into a little bit of threat detection as well. So SOC CDA gets you advanced skill sets as a SOC analyst so that you can really impress. And then you're also going to be wanting to look at Detection Engineering 100 and our upcoming DFIR 100 course. So that's what SOC 200 is. SOC 200 is CDA. So consider SOC 100 tier 1, consider SOC 200 tier 2 in general. Let's see what else. Got a couple other questions. Bearded Ruck is cool. Nice. Good to have you starting with us next week. KSJ, you want to contribute? Yeah. Well, go get yourself joined up as a community junior SOC analyst. Start helping out the community. Mr. Meeseek says, I didn't have the opportunity to build foundational sysadmin skills because I was hired. Yeah, so okay. So Mr. Meeseek, that's exactly... Here, I'll go upside the chat over here, right? You can see inside the screen. That's exactly what I was talking about. You didn't have the opportunity to build foundational sysadmin skills because you were hired as a junior SOC analyst a few years back, and a lot of people were. The market was just like, okay, you have a Sec Plus, you took a boot camp, cool, we'll teach you the rest as you get inside. Now, you're saying, as I advanced through this through these SOC tiers, the lack of those skills showed in my analysis. Yes, exactly. That's what I was trying to say earlier. You started to realize, like, I don't actually know this. Like, I can't explain it. And because there's some gaps, your foundations weren't really there. Windows Enterprise Goldmine will be a goldmine. Sorry, Windows Enterprise Admin will be a goldmine for any aspiring SOC folks. Yeah, totally. That's where it starts to get really into the sysadmin skill set. Cash, so you're the same? Yeah. Yeah. That happened to a lot of students. That happened to a lot. Yeah. Cool. So Cash, you bought CDA before SOC came out. Yeah, right, exactly. So Cash, you started on CDA, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's advanced. It's very advanced content, and we know that. This is why we're trying to beef up these fundamentals courses into the SOC 100 series to really, really prepare you for this. So yeah, looks like SOC 100-5 coincides. Exactly. Actually, so Karina, and just kind of talk a little bit about that for everyone, is that SOC 100-5 is well advanced. Like, you can start CDA. You can start CDA as of SOC 100-3 and 4. So that's why we have this set up right here if you want to jump into the next live training. for CDA, or if you just want to buy the on-demand at that point. SOC 100-5 prepares you for like Detection Engineering 100 and DFIR and other things. It's part of it, but it's not necessary to start CDA. Yeah, it's not necessary, but we want you to be prepared. Like if you can do SOC 100-5 before CDA, you're going to be like really, really sharp for CDA. So we recommend it, but not necessary. 100-3 and 4 is necessary. You have to pass this certification in order to be effective in CDA. So that's a little bit about the course, kind of what we're doing here today. Holy, we have 54 viewers. I just realized here on the side. And a bunch of followers. I'm so sorry. I didn't see the followers popping up. 1 second over here. Jeez. Okay. Yeah, so there was a whole bunch. So Cash, Wild, Mr. Me6, Trade, Infidel, Technomancer, cool name. Stun, Dio, Yarden, Abe, Kim. Got a list over there. D3380, with Husey, and Frank as well too. Thank you everyone for the follow. Thank you. Jeez, yeah. It's 54 of it. All of you inside of here. That's crazy. Cool. Gotta keep that inside so I don't miss it. But alright. Little posture check. Make sure you stretch as well too. So, you know, like a side note, you're gonna run into a lot of IT and cybersecurity folk that have like back pains and sitting pains. Please don't become one of them. Get up and stretch and do stuff. Move around a little bit. We'll take some breaks too today. Like we're gonna do this and then take like a 5-10 and then a break and whatnot. So yeah, exactly. I have a bad habit of that. My posture, I can get really like stuck into the computer, so I always kind of go back and stretch a little bit. What else is going on inside of chat? Yeah, Bearded. So you went through WGU. Yeah, we've had, you know, I've seen students go to WGU. I've seen students get a master's in cybersecurity, and they couldn't tell you or walk you through where malware was on a workstation. They couldn't triage it, and they couldn't even open up Wireshark and find a malicious payload on an HTTP GET request. In fact, they couldn't even filter for it. And they couldn't explain why. And I'm not saying this is every student, but I'm saying I think that there's a bit of a problem. Yeah, there's a bit of a problem to be able to go through a program like that and complete it and get a piece of paper and not know that. And that, I think that's why we've built what we built for SOC 100 for CDA. You can't graduate our content unless you can demonstrate you're able to do the stuff. Even for CDA, the CDCP certification is you have to be able to do it. It's practical. There's no multiple choice. And so I'm not knocking their content, but there's a problem if you can graduate from that content and come out with it in that way. So perhaps the content is good, but I wish that the grading was a little more practical. That's really my point of contention, I think, with it. Yeah, speedrunners just signed up. You work in telecom engineering. Yeah, nice. Oh, Yarden, you're gonna like when we get to networking then. Okay, so Prin, you're saying you just joined 6 minutes ago. No, so Prin, I'm gonna walk you through the courses, whether you pay or not. If you pay, you get access to all the content. Like you can go through and do all the labs and everything. But otherwise, you can watch me do it, and I don't know if that's good enough, but that's entirely up to you. We're just trying to provide a free option as well too for people to watch the recordings, and you can still learn. But if you want like the practical kinesthetic doing the stuff together with me, I recommend if you're able to. So Prin, you're saying you graduated master's in cybersecurity at Liberty University. Yeah, so I described exactly you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you were in that position, but I hope that this can help you then. Yeah, It's all multiple choice exams. That's exactly it, right? Like it's, I'm sure the content is good. I've heard good things of the content, but the graduation process should not be a multiple choice exam for a practical field. And cybersecurity is a trade. Imagine you wanted to get a carpenter in your house to do some work, and they showed up and they're like, well, I read a book and then I passed a verbal test, but they've never worked with tools. I think that's a problem. It shouldn't be like that, right? It just doesn't make any sense. Ooh, Frank Herbert quote. Nice. Plan depends as much upon execution as it does upon concept. Yes. Yes. You don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. Lots of I know he didn't say that, but kind of riffing off that with you. Nice Dune quote. I appreciate it. Champlain College. Yeah, happens everywhere. You graduate in software dev and had a fellow student who never heard of. Wow, they didn't know how to do modulus. Yep, used to check with Mark on HR requirement. Yeah. Oh man, performance PBQs. I remember that on my Psych Plus. Yeah, performance based questions, eh? Yeah. No, they don't help. That's the short answer, Bearded. Sorry. Yeah, I think you know that, though. With those tears of joy / pain. Cool. So it looks like everyone chat is generally... I'll kind of keep going down. I would say generally it looks like everyone in chat is sharing the same kind of sentiment, right? And that's why we did build this training, for those reasons, like what you're all experiencing. You're all seeing and feeling what we have seen many students tell us as well too over the years of 5 years of doing this. And it doesn't have to be that way. So we've spent 5 years to get here to be able to deliver this course so that it's affordable, accessible to get you all through it. And we hope that you can find it of value. And I mean that. Because if I get one more message, from a student, I'm going to have to go and do something about the industry. I don't know. So I hope that you can all find this of value, because we really want you to be set up for success and not be stifled rather, I should say, behind paywalls and pay points or misleading marketing. That's my rant. I might rant about it another time. Well, cool. And I appreciate people helping each other in chat. I see the comments going back and forth. Nice. I love it. Good job, everyone. Okay, so let's walk a little bit through the platform now, and then we'll take a little bit of a break. Just a little fiver, stand up, stretch, and see how that goes. So inside the platform, you will find your VMs on the left-hand side, your virtual machines, for those that are brand new. And your virtual machines are essentially workstations inside of the browser. And you can access them through a tab, like a tabbed view. And what it's actually doing is it's opening up a remote desktop connection. Okay? We'll talk more about that protocol and that working and how that works. But what you're doing is you're sending a request to a server to power on a computer far out into the cloud, as you may have heard it, which is just another computer. So you're sending a request from your computer to another computer to turn on, and then you're going to connect to it through a virtual remote desktop protocol session, RDP. Find out more about this. And then this is what we're going to do. We're going to turn these on. And now the first time you're going to actually turn them on, they're going to take a little bit longer to start. And they might take like 1 to 3 minutes maybe, depending on how things go. But once they're initialized, then they will start up much faster in the future. So you can go ahead, and when we get to the labs, when you buy the course, you do get 50 hours worth of credits. You can see this is 4 credits an hour, and we've tried to give you enough to get through the course on like a single good pass. And then if you need to buy more hours, I believe they're like 20 to 40 cents per hour. Yeah. Jazzy Fizzle. So within the course, yes, VMs are provided for everyone. Otherwise, if this is free, feel free to follow along, and you can do this stuff on your computer as well too. And you can try building a virtual machine home lab, which we're going to have steps for that later. When we get to the home lab portion, we're going to show steps on how to do this. And I may have some content ahead of that for those that want to try to go at it alone. Yep, Mr. Meeseeks. Yeah, VMs are provided for every single course, so you'll be able to access them all. So, yeah, you can see like it's waiting for System Console to start. Do a little refresh here. Not yet. Yep. Let's give it a second. So the first time you boot, like I said, give it a little bit of time, and you can buy some additional lab time. Now, a couple of things to note, everyone. See how it turned connect? Like I can highlight it now so I can connect to it. Couple things to note. Okay. First of all, if your VM is blowing up on you, which is fine, we encourage you to break it. Please do. Go ahead. All good. You can stop it and turn it back on. It's just like turning the power off and on. Power cycling. If something goes really bad and you can never get back in, you can do a full reset. And a reset is going to bring it back to its original state before you've done anything. So you will lose progress. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, you shouldn't really have to reset often. This should be the exception. And we encourage you to try and troubleshoot what you've done. And we'll provide support for that inside of Discord. Just reach out inside of the SOC100 channel. And we'll be able to help you out. So now that they're connected, you can see if I want to connect to any single one of them, I just hit the little connect button and it's going to open up this new session over here. And then it's going to load. It's going to say that I'm logging in as this administrator account. So by default, you are the administrator of Windows in this case. And give it like, you know, 15 to 30 seconds to kind of do its thing. It's turning on. It's all connected for you now. And shortly after, you should be able to connect. So you've got some little pinned applications down here in the bottom of the taskbar. As you can see, I can go and I can start running some commands over here, and everything's effectively working at this point. Now, you're going to see a pop-up here in the bottom. And this is going to say that your password has expired. That's fine. Just move along. Now, the reason being is we are using a license of Windows that anyone can just load up. So you're going to see some things like licensing and passwords pop up in your times. That's fine. You can go ahead and close this reminder. And you might see a blue bar appear on the right-hand side of the screen. It's going to ask you if you want to share the workstation with a network. Hit yes. If you don't hit yes and you miss it, that's fine. It really shouldn't be causing an issue. And if it does, we can walk you through it. So that's effectively connecting to one of your workstations. Linux is the same way. And you can open up both at the same time. And we will be using both together at times as we go through things like with networking portions. But you can see now that like once things are actually loaded, it is a fairly decently fast connection, which is pretty impressive on this platform. Yeah. So like Linux over here, same kind of thing. We got a little applications. We're going to learn how to use Linux. So good. I love Linux. I hope you all love it too as we go through it. And I'll try to make sure that my font size all looks good as well too. So now when you're not using the VMs, make sure that they're off. So go ahead and hit the stop button so that you don't waste your credits needlessly. Yeah, crosses. Absolutely. Linux. Linux is huge. We're actually going to cover so much Linux. Like, take a look at all these. We're going to take you from all the way from... We're actually going to show you the Linux GUI, which is like sacrilegious. But we're actually going to show you the GUI as well too, the desktop, and we're going to walk you through all different labs. You're going to go all the way down to actually building your own security tool. You're going to do a lot of advanced editing as well. And you're going to learn about stream redirection and all those cool fancy things. So what we're going to start off with today is the Windows operating system. And this stream will be recorded and it's going to load over here inside of the recorded streams option. So you can see they will appear here. They will also appear inside of YouTube, like I said, but for ease of access, just for students, we can throw them here as well. Either one is fine, whichever platform. It'll be a YouTube video just embedded inside of here, kind of like these. So, before you begin, you're going to see little notes like this saying you only require your Windows workstation for this entire module. Things like that to kind of save you your time and your credits. So don't boot up Linux inside of Windows because we're not going to cover yet. Cool. Sounds good? Any questions on sort of the getting started, the course, anything like that? And then we'll kind of do like a 5-10 minute break. What do you think? Are you trying to do dark mode, Starlight? So yeah, you said your core stack window is white. You tried to fix it. You can't. No. Okay, what are you saying? It doesn't show. Your core stack window. Are you in Chrome? Make sure. Yes, please use Chrome browser. Give it a refresh. Give it a good refresh. You should be able to see it. Maybe close some tabs as well too. And if nothing else, drop, I think you have access to the SOC100 chat. I don't see you inside there. 1 second. Should have it. Oh. So if any of you have like weird screenshot issues, go ahead and, sorry, if any of you have weird issues like with your screen or VM and stuff, the Twitch chat doesn't support dropping screenshots. So if you're comfortable, drop inside a Discord or drop like an image if you know how to upload images to like image UR and stuff. There's no dark mode for the system. So Starlight, if you want to go ahead and yeah, so you can go ahead and you can clear all of your cookies and site data starting over here. Load up your browser and you can clean that all up, clean out your history and such, but drop a screenshot as well too inside of the SOC100 student chat. See what's going on. It shouldn't be white. It just sounds like something needs to be cleared out. Close the browser, start again kind of thing. SOC100 chats inside of Discord CI. I think you should have access to it. If not, our backend team is going to be able to add you shortly. But just use the chat here. Unless there's something like you need to troubleshoot right now. The Discord is consider that to be like off hours. Not off hours, but like use the stream chat over here and then maybe hop inside of Discord if it needs to be a little bit more in depth. Where can you reset your password? Wild, what are you, what password? All peace. Oh, your account password? For Core Stack or for Windows, though? Kind of weird. See your issue over there, Starlight. Course password is inside of your... So if you go to, like, training.loweffect.com, you should be able to go to your sign in. Oh, it's not good. It's gonna... Okay. You should be able to go to your profile and then... No, not here. I think it's on your login screen. Actually do like a log out and then do a reset password. Yep. Jonathan, see your messages over there. So yeah, just give it some time. It takes a little bit of time to load up. So it says waiting for system console to be available. That's all it takes. Perfect. Sounds like you're in. Good stuff. Good stuff, Jonathan. Drop that inside of Discord. I'm gonna have to route that to the Core Stack team then. The LMS, Learning Management System. It's a platform we use. So if there's something wrong with your account, I'm gonna have to escalate it over to them. Yeah, same with you, Starlight. If you clear out your cache and everything and you still can't get in, we're gonna have to get you sorted out. Private session's not bad either. Yeah, good mention, KSJ. Private session would disable like any extensions you might have. I'm not sure if you have like pop-up blocker, like uBlock Origin or Privacy Badger or something that might be getting in the way. Cool. Alrighty. I'm going to go take a little 5-minute break here, and then we're going to jump right into... Just going to leave this up, see a couple questions. People interested in the pricing over here. So the cost. All right, so let's take a look at this. So that's each. Cool. So I'm going to be back. Alrighty. Let's take a little break, everyone. I'll be back. Go stretch your legs too, and we're going to jump into first couple lecture portions, and then dive into some labs. Cool. Okay. Welcome back. How's everyone doing? Okay, so to kick things back off over here, hop in through a little bit of the lecture side, and this is from our. Can I just go through the slides this way? I should just go and find those slides. So Starlight, you're still having some issues. I think you might need to shoot your email over to email account you use. Something's going on. I might have to get the core stack team to take a look at it. Yeah, CI, go ahead and I'm gonna shoot you into it right now, real quick. Should be in now. All right, let's go into it. So, who here feels comfortable they can describe what an operating system is at this point? Curious. Or even if you're brand new, you know, like, you want to maybe give it a shot? And I guess you could look at my screen right now if you really wanted, but... Cool, so you're in CI. Good. Mr. Meeseeks, thanks for coming by. Enjoy the day with the kid. And yeah, catch up in the stream once I get it uploaded. But we'll see you later. Thanks for coming in. Okay, so let's just kind of go into it then. So an operating system in and of itself, I think, you know, you can really think about it as being... Think about it as being sort of like a mediator between the hardware and software. So you have your computer physical hardware, right? Like the case, the inside, the power supply, the motherboard. You have these components. You've heard of CPU, you've heard of memory and RAM and your hard drive, your disk, right? These things, that's all like that hardware category. And an operating system sits in the middle of that. It's virtual, and we'll talk more about what that kind of looks like, but it sits right in the middle. And it allows hardware to be utilized to present a screen, right? Like your computer screen, something that you can see and touch and interact with your mouse and keyboard. So yeah, you know, processing, it's a connection layer between what the user clicks and hardware components. So what you do, what I'm doing here, like moving around, kind of scrolling through the screen, every time I do that, like I'm interfacing with my mouse and scrolling through, and that's sending a signal to the computer, to the hardware, that is mediated by the operating system to make this screen scroll for me right now, and I can click around and play this video as I would like. So, you know, like it says, right, like it's kind of like just like a traffic cop. Imagine that, like imagine in an intersection, you've seen a traffic cop kind of sitting there directing traffic, going all these different directions. That's effectively what it is like. That's what an operating system is. Now, what it's actually made out of and kind of what it does. So we talked about hardware and software and sort of sitting in between. It does a couple key things. Some of them being hardware management. So it'll decide how much power like your computer should tell the hardware to pull based on what's happening with the user, what they need the computer to do, what files and photos and videos you need to save to your hard drive. And it also provides us an interface. So this window, like all of this right here, this is part of what's called a window manager. Corny little name, but yeah, Windows, right? It's a Windows manager, and that's what the operating system actually provides for you to interact with. And we also have process management. So this allows us to do multiple things at once. So some of you are opening up a browser, you have Discord running, you have various programs running, Microsoft Word and your Office and Photoshop and Spotify, and Facebook is open and whatnot, right? Like you have a lot of things open. That's your operating system allows you to do that. It also, yeah, 100 tabs of Chrome. That's probably the more accurate answer. Yeah, it's instead of everything I just mentioned, your operating system allows you to have a browser open with 100 tabs like everyone else. That's true. It also allows you to store your files, photos, all that stuff, right? Like we go on a trip, we take photos, we put it on the hard drive, we look at it later kind of thing. And all of this is what's happening in the cloud as well too. So it's sort of reciprocated virtually to another computer. Prin, you're saying, is it advisable we take the fundamental courses before this? So no, Prin, the fundamentals courses have been put inside of the SOC 100 course. So we are going through the fundamentals. That's why anyone who owned it before and paid for it will keep it. But we're going to walk through it together. And then all the new, good, fancy, exciting stuff. I mean, this stuff is also exciting, but fancy, shiny stuff coming here is all the advanced content that we've thrown on top of the fundamentals to really bridge the gap, because it was missing the domain and enterprise and help desk stuff. So yes, this is directly still from the fundamentals, and I'm just going to walk you through it. So operating systems, you've seen them. Windows, we are primarily currently on Windows. That's the operating system inside of businesses. You've seen it. And then we have Mac. A lot of people are on a Mac these days. And then we have the Linux users. We have the Linux users. People like myself that like to have a Linux on the side. And we're going to learn all about it and why it's available. And we have smartphones. Smartphones have their own operating systems as well too. So like my phone here that I can interact with, this is iOS. This is my iPhone, and that's an operating system as well. And it allows me to touch the phone and interact with it, and then things happen. Like I can look at photos, I can open up a little browser, I can send messages. That's all an operating system in and of itself. iOS operating system. So we've got quite a few different operating systems that are publicly available that people like to use. And you can just imagine that whenever you have computer hardware, whether that's your phone or not, your watch, anything that is a computer which has the hardware like the CPU, memory, motherboard, all that stuff that operates like a computer, there will always be an operating system in front of that for you to interact with to get that hardware to do things for you. So there are a lot. There are a lot of operating systems out there. Primarily, Windows is the one that you need to be very proficient in IT and cybersecurity, because the end users are primarily on Windows. That's what they use. And that's where a lot of vulnerabilities occur. Now, on top of that, they also use Mac and Linux and Android and iOS. So depending on your focus, you also want to be stronger in those areas as well too for wherever you want to go. But Windows is crucial. Windows is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. Getting started in this, you do need to understand Windows. Secondly, Linux, somewhat negotiable. You do need to understand and work with Linux and know how it works, because you're going to utilize Linux in a lot of supporting, supplemental ways to what you need to do inside of work, and servers use it quite heavily, and cloud-based operations is very heavily relied on Linux, and we'll talk about why. But Windows is non-negotiable. Linux, strongly recommended, to the point that I would say, yes, just learn it. It's worth your time. It is not worth your time to skip it, is what I would say. That's a better way to think about it. Let's go next slide over. So let's talk a little bit about the history and kind of why these things came to be in the first place. The first operating systems were, yeah, if you can see that little, let me zoom in a little bit here. Yeah. So you can see like some of those early computers. The early computers were just literally inputs and outputs, sending signals back and forth with wires and connecting them. And then an output would happen with more switches and wires. And we eventually moved also to like punch cards. You would get a card. So like a lottery ticket I bought that I didn't win anything. But you get a card like this and you would punch things inside of it. And then you would feed it to the system. And it would do things. So this was like the next operating system almost, right? Like you started to feed the system to do things. The first operating system, in a way, was all those wires you were connecting everywhere. Not very useful. And yes, KSJ, not desk-friendly at all. Then we eventually moved into the command line interface, and that's the CLI. So that's an important term. You're going to hear that being used a lot, especially when you get inside of Linux itself. The command line interface provided us a way to use a keyboard to send data and signals to the hardware instead of all those wires and punch cards. And then it gave us a screen that showed us what happened as we sent that data over, and things appeared on the screen saying what the hardware is doing, like generating text for you to read. So if I hit the ASDF keys, you would see them appear on the computer screen. That provided a near real-time feedback working with computer hardware, which is fantastic. And that was for a long time how computers were used, for a number of years. And people were very happy with that because it's very fast, right? Like you just say, you hit keys, you hit shortcuts, and you're done. However, that did have a steep learning curve, and it was very technical. Commands had to be shortened. So dir, right? The dir command for directory listing. You would have to know that I have to run dir whenever I need to learn directory listing. So you see it starts to add up. Some commands were easier, like copy and such. But then we had things kind of like make dir, like mkdir, right? So make directory. But you can see that starts to compound. And then eventually you start to get things like net user, and things start to change. And then you start to get things with slashes. You'll get things like net user slash something like that. You'll start to get these advanced commands. So you can see that starts to create a barrier of entry. So what happened was, as computer hardware got stronger and better and screens started to look better for us, we came up with the graphical user interface, which you can see this section right here. The early versions of Windows. So I grew up with this operating system here. MS-DOS, Microsoft DOS. This is what I grew up with. My first computer kind of looked like this. It was a 386. Let's see. M386. So that actually really looks like my... That really looks like it, actually. I think it's this one right here. So this is how computers used to look. I grew up in that era. I think a lot of people around my age bracket probably grew up in that era as well too. And we interacted with computer systems like this. But then eventually came the graphical user interface, the GUI, which allowed us to, instead of having to learn commands, we could use our natural interpretations of things by moving a mouse around to click on things and just enter basic things to get the computer to do advanced stuff. That really took things off. And we can see something similar happening now with AI. We can see something similar happening before that with smartphones. You don't really even need a keyboard much anymore because you can move your finger around and tap things. And you can also just use emojis. Like some people just literally tap around and use emojis with very shortened words and they use speech to text. All of these things are that layer, that abstraction layer from using the hardware to do things for you. And that's kind of where things are going to just continue to go. We're going to reduce complexity of what is required for the user to do and learn to utilize technology to improve their life. That is no question. That will just continue to happen. Does that make sense? That's the wrong one. Because we've eventually, you can see where we've come from, right? Wires and things, to punch cards and text, to basic Windows, to very advanced Windows 11 operating systems and Mac OS. That's something to pay attention to because that should give you some direction of where things are going in the future. Let me know if that makes sense, if that's all clear. We can chat as well too. Chat seems to be, yeah, no questions over in SOC. Good. Good stuff. Cool. So, pretty straightforward. Now, what is the operating system made up of? This is where things start to get a little more complicated now. This is where you start to have to pay a little bit more attention. We have this thing called the kernel, and we'll talk more about that in the next slide of things. But the kernel you can think of as like another layer in between that. And then we have this user interface, like we mentioned. We have a file system. We have these things called drivers that interact with the kernel and the user interface to tell the hardware what to do and optimize it. And then we have utilities and Windows managers and such. That's effectively what an operating system is. It's a bunch of things. It's not a single thing. You have this kernel, you have an interface, you have a file system, and you have device drivers and utilities. That effectively is an operating system. That's an OS. You could reduce this. You could have just the kernel and just some text ability and a file system, and that could be an operating system. That is effectively a basic form of Linux. So you could strip things down quite a lot. Remember, an operating system is just a way to interact with the hardware and use its resources to do advanced operations, like mathematics and text and data manipulation, etc. Now, what the operating system is effectively trying to provide for you to make this all work is they're using these things called processes. And there's also memory management and there's networking, which we now use. We all connect to different workstations. There's also security and access control to make sure that what you have and you don't want others to see, that you can provide a layer of security in front of. User management is another big one as well. That's how we have businesses running today. We moved from pen and paper to computer workstations. This has all been the result of operating systems utilizing computer hardware to take all that data on paper and put inside of a computer so you can get millions of these pieces of paper transferring back and forth and handling operations and doing things far faster than a human could do with their hands and legs and eyes. That's effectively it. So what we can imagine, what we can surmise from this is moving forward, we're going to see a continued abstraction with less user knowledge required to operate these pieces of technology, that we can just utilize our basic human abilities, speaking, talking, touch, movement, our senses, is going to be a future version of what an operating system would have for a user interface. That's where things are going. It's going to take some time to get there, but that's where things are headed. So pay attention to that. And this is why it's so important to understand the history of an operating system and why we've gotten to where we are and where we're going. Because if you're in IT, your job is going to be the one to administer and manage that technology in a secure fashion to provide it to other employees and users to do their job or enrich their life. You're going to have to understand it. And you're going to have to be the one to support and troubleshoot it when it fails. You're also going to be the one to have to manage the resources used for it and the financial cost and the budget. That's what the IT side is. Now, what the security side is including that IT. So it takes that IT and then it just adds in layers of security protection. And that's where you get security and access control. Security and access control mechanisms and processes and technology, etc., is cybersecurity. But the networking and memory management, processes and user management, all this stuff, that's IT. So you can see, you need to have all of that IT knowledge around it to layer on the security, which is a much smaller portion in the grand scheme of things. There isn't a security method of creating a user account and managing it. There is an IT method to do that, interacting with the operating system. And then you consider security you consider security implications along the way. That's how you need to think about it. So does that make sense? Could you describe what an operating system is now? I want someone in chat to tell me in their own words. Walk me through. Give it a shot. Someone try to tell me now, based on from what we've been talking about. Go and describe what an operating system is. And try to give it some depth. I'll give everyone a minute or two. I see a little Discord request in the meantime too. Do a little support here in the meantime while I see some answers come in. Okay, so a couple of questions. Abe, 251. Oh, wait, print. So OS helps computer hardware communicate with software. Yes. Yes, good. Abe, 251. It's a software Yes, good, good. Yes, it is a software that provides the hardware resources for the apps and other software use, as well as providing an interface for the user to interact with apps. Yep, good. Good answers. An OS is an advanced software application that hosts other services, schedule tasks, execution, and processes. It is the manager of managers. Yeah, manager of managers. Yes, it is. Yeah. Kim Fried, so it orchestrates the different hardware parts and translate user input into the needed hardware commands. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Joe's saying, yes, OS is software that allows us to make hardware components functional. We can interact with the data we're inputting. Perfect. Well done, everyone. This is good. So tracking well, clear, simple. Sweet. Okay. So let's go and get ourselves a little bit deeper. And we're going to move over to the Windows History and Architecture lecture and talk a little bit more about this. Get my setup over here. Okay, cool. So Starlight, you're on a different browser. Good, yeah. Nice. Okay. Alrighty. So, little history. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about how this timeline, how this all sort of happened. We had the foundations of it all. DOS, that's the disk operating system. That was introduced in 1981. And MS-DOS 1.0. So that was what I mentioned over here. Like, this is MS-DOS. Like, this is what we were once upon interacting with. But it wasn't until 1985 when we started to have the first versions of Windows 1.0. And like, so myself, I started off with Windows 3.1. That's where I started off with Windows. I was messing around with DOS before that. And then we started to see some advanced versions of Windows appear, like Windows 95. Remember we had Windows XP. Not sure if anyone's a Windows XP user over here. From way back, that background. Is that in the next slide, actually? I think it might be, yeah. And then we moved into Windows XP, moved over to Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11. So what was really interesting was Windows 7 and Windows 8. We saw... I loved XP. If we could have just stayed at XP and made everything faster, I think I actually would have been fine. Like, it was a nice looking operating system. It had a lot of weird stability issues, but after they patched it all, things started to run pretty well. But like, it looked good, it ran well, it supported things easily. The user interface was nice and clean. I mean, in some ways, like, this kind of looks a little bit nicer, right? Like, it looks a little old school, but it has a charm. But something interesting happened over here with Windows 7 to Windows 8. Windows 7 to 8, we started to see some messing around with mobile. So Windows 7 was really good, but Windows 8 came as Microsoft's approach to provide like a mobile first type of operating system. Didn't really get received really well. It was sort of like a half-baked solution. They tried to really remove a lot of the user interface and try to rely on phone interfaces. It wasn't that great, but it was a step in the direction that led us to Windows 10. And Windows 10 was quite solid after that. And what happened was, as I mentioned, we started to see less and less dependency of a user needing to learn the operating system to be able to use it. Now, why do you think I keep hammering that point home? Why do you think I keep stressing to you the importance of the fact that the end user is becoming less and less technical? Why do you think that's a problem? And maybe why do you think that's important for you to know getting inside of IT and cybersecurity? Grass-fed cyber. We need to be technical to help them. Yes. Yes. I felt some pain in that statement, but yes. Abe251, it introduces more security risks. Yes. Yes, it does. It certainly does. End users are the biggest risk in an organization. 100%. More risks involved, more responsibility for security professionals. Yep. If you don't understand things, you can't fix it. They're the reason we have a job. Yes. So in some way, and this is interesting to think about, the more we moved away from a text-based operating system like Linux and MS-DOS and all those kind of early renditions, the more jobs we got, because we started to get more people using technology that knew less and less about technology over time that we had to support and secure so that we had work. So, I mean, was it a good thing? I guess it's a good thing we have jobs. We get paid well. But are we victims of our own fortune? Like, did we design operating systems and technology to the point where users are just creating more work for us that's just like, it's more busy work? So is it good to have a text-based operating system? Or is it good to have a Windows-based operating system with a GUI? These are questions to think about. Crossa says you have to really know what they're talking about. Yes. Yes. You have to understand this stuff so that when users come up to you and they say they can't log in, or their browser's not working, or Starlight, I'm going to pick on you here. But, you know, how you said, like, you got the little spinning circle? One day, a user's going to tell you that. One day, someone is going to go up to you and say, hey, my browser's just spinning. There's a circle. I can't connect. So the roles will change. All of you. I had some questions about resetting password. All of those, like, IT questions, you are going to get one day. So be ready. The more we abstract technology and all the things you said, those are great answers, everyone. The more you're going to have to understand this stuff. Because they could say something like, it doesn't turn on. And then in your mind, that could mean so many things, right? That could mean a million things. So you have to be able to ask them good, guided, probing questions to figure out what the problem is. And then maybe think about ways that you can provide technology for them that this doesn't happen in the first place. Maybe you can have a change management cycle. Maybe you can have an asset management program. And if you have those things, maybe you'll be able to replace that power supply before it blows up. Maybe you'll be able to change that disk before it fails. And the user comes to you and says, I can't turn it on. Now, what I just mentioned to you, change management and patch management, those are IT and cybersecurity things. In fact, it is something called GRC. Yeah. RMM, yeah. Having the ability to anticipate when things are going to fail and then fix them in advance before it actually fails is an IT and security problem. It requires IT knowledge and it requires security practices and security understanding. So you're going to have to learn how this operating system can work and how it can fail, because you're going to have to support it and you're going to have to secure it. So we're going to have user-friendly interfaces and software compatibility and all this stuff. that makes Windows nice and bought in by everyone. But then you get all the problems with Windows. That's when you get KSJ over here in their sysadmin days, figuring out ways to keep everything secure and running and on time, managing them remotely. So it's an interesting notion to think about where we're headed, because as we head to more mobile devices and AI integrated operating systems, like look at Apple Intelligence. Has anyone played with Apple Intelligence yet? Has anyone played with ChatGPT? I'm going to wager pretty much everyone has used ChatGPT at this point in time. I'd be really surprised if you haven't used ChatGPT yet or haven't heard about it. Yeah. So guess what's going to happen when a user comes up to you and they said that their AI, their Apple Intelligence tool is not working, or their ChatGPT tool is not giving them the right answer. Abe, you use it so much you're starting to you're becoming the AI, yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah, it has a style, right? It's like it really does. Yeah, so it's amazing. Like, it's helping you, it's helping everyone, it's helping the end user, but you're gonna have to also learn how to work with it to troubleshoot and resolve things. It's gonna make your job easier. Finally, a tool to make IT and security easier, right? So we think. We'll get to that later. That's a much more advanced topic. But let's talk a little bit about some more about the operating system. This is really important to pay attention to here. Okay. So there is effectively a flow, and this is why, you know, we had mentioned in the chat about it being a layer, because it is layers of things. That's what an operating system is. Layers of different pieces of software and hardware acting together. I could say you could probably say it's primarily software at that point. The hardware is just the engine, if you will, of the operating system, but it doesn't really do much beyond that. Also, you've noticed our engine will give a simplistic and sometimes wrong answer. Yes. Okay. So there's also things of AI hallucination, and that's an interesting topic to maybe come back on, where AI is providing you a confident answer that it believes exists and it can support itself, but it's not true. So it's important to understand how to prompt AI to get the right information out of it. It is a tool. And if used incorrectly, I don't know, a lot of implications. So let's talk a little bit more about this screen over here. This is really important to pay attention to. But the operating system has two effective spaces. We have kernel space and user space. We have these two spaces, okay, where things exist. And what happens is, when you turn your computer on, and I think that's a little bit ahead in the slide, right? We can stop there. So when you turn your computer on, what happens is there's this thing called the kernel. The kernel, it's effectively like a file. More specifically, I would say like an executable file. And that file is loaded into RAM, into memory. So the kernel is loaded in. It goes inside of the memory on the hardware. And what happens is this process between memory and CPU and your file system on your hard drive start to interact. You start to load. And they start to load the Windows kernel. You might have heard like the Linux kernel or other types of kernels. And this effectively is a piece of software of its own that is the lowest level of code that is utilizing like simple highs and lows on off of electricity inside the hardware to make the hardware do things, and then it's stored as electrical states of on and off power inside of your RAM, inside of your memory. And it says store this kernel here with inside of memory into this thing called, go back one slide. You can see this. It's something called kernel space. And it says nothing should ever go inside that space inside of memory. That is designated reserved space inside of your RAM, your memory, for the kernel to load and stay and sit there. And that's called kernel space. Now what happens is, why is that still going? I thought I turned it off. All good. Okay. So now that that's loaded, the kernel says, here is an ability to write like text with your keys. Here is another ability to move your mouse around with this thing called a window manager. Here is now a file system for you to interact with. The kernel loads all these things. After the kernel has initialized all of these interface components, you have your operating system. That is now Windows. Like that is how Windows loads. Your Windows kernel loads. It loads up the Windows process, like it's called the window manager. And that allows me to have a browser. It allows me to have a desktop and a GUI. It loads up a terminal that allows me to input keys, kind of like how we saw the MS-DOS. It allows me to now interact with the hardware. That's what the kernel is doing. It's providing input abilities and process management abilities and file system abilities. These are all different types of processes that are running. Now, as these things load, some of them load into what is now called user space. Now, you might hear this called interchangeably. You might hear this getting called as like kernel land and user land, or kernel space and user land, or kernel land and user space. Regardless, at the end of the day, however you want to go with them, and we're just going to go with kernel space. Kernel space is effectively like what I said. It is the kernel of the operating system itself. And that, you can imagine, truly is the engine of your car. And then you have, let's actually use like a car example. Imagine under the hood of your car, you have an engine, okay? That is your kernel. The outer casing of the car is a process that provides a shell, okay? That provides a shell of your car that you can touch and interact with. But it doesn't do much more than that. That's kind of what like your command line is. And then you open up the shell and you can sit inside this seat. And this seat is effectively where you have your mouse and keyboard. And that's your steering wheel. That's your ignition. And then you have this view in front of you, your dashboard. That's your desktop. But this is all, your experience of all of this is provided to you by the kernel. And your kernel provides the ability, like the engine, to go faster, go slower, turn left, turn right, change signals, all that stuff, like how you would have these outer layers of the car. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's I messaged aside. But that's effectively what the Windows kernel is. It's like this engine, and then it loads these things. Now you can touch the steering wheel, right? You can touch the dashboard and the wipers and all this stuff. That's user space. But you can't get inside the engine, right? If you were to try to open up the hood, everything's bolted and shut down, screwed down. Like you can't get inside of it. You could whack it, or like you could crank it and rip it open, right? But then you would destroy it, and that's effectively what would happen. If your engine died in your car would shut down. If your kernel is interrupted with, your computer shuts down. It doesn't run anymore. Does that make a little bit more sense? Like, this is more of a complicated thing to understand about what the kernel actually is. People like to say Windows kernel, Linux kernel, but they have a hard time visualizing and abstracting what it actually is and what it does and when it's loaded and why it does what it does. And yet there isn't a separate RAM. There's actually, it's the same RAM. So your user space and kernel space live within the same RAM, the same memory chip, like it's on your hardware, on your motherboard. But there's a space of reserved memory. And maybe I can give you a visual for that. So let's go to memory, mapping, kernel. Let's see if this is like a nice image that can show you this. Memory, map, visual, Windows, kernel, user space. Let's see if that comes up with something better. I should probably actually wait a minute. Hold on. Here. That's probably better to think about it. Okay. Basically, there's a separate RAM. Yeah, so let's stop over there. So effectively, I'll kind of walk through that. You see this hardware down here, where I'm moving my mouse around. That's your motherboard and your CPU, power supply, the case, all that stuff. And then you have this hardware abstraction layer. And that's effectively where things sort of start to speak. This is now... These are actual, like, lines on the motherboard that handle electrical signals back and forth between the hardware and things. And what's happening is the memory that sits between the hardware and those lines. So imagine like your engine that has a connection to the steering wheel, like you can turn. Like your steering wheel is actually like connected forward to tell the engine to kind of move with the, and the tires rotate, and there's a bunch of connections underneath. Same thing's kind of happening. There's a layer in between your steering wheel to the engine. Like you're not turning your engine to turn the car. So what happens is there's a space inside there. That space between the steering wheel and the engine is effectively where like your memory would live. There's a state. Is your car left? Is your car right? That's how you have to look at it. That information there of being left and then right is effectively the amount of space that your memory is holding to tell your kernel what it should be doing back and forth with the hardware. And a piece of that is dedicated just to the kernel. So if you want to think about the car analogy, if you pop open the hood and the engine's sitting there, that is how the kernel lives inside of memory. Nothing else is there other than the engine. And that's how it looks like inside of memory. There is a reserved space just for the kernel to sit, which is the engine. Nothing goes inside of it. And then there are connections between the engine to other things. And that's how you get into user space. What is Windows based off? I know Mac and Linux is Unix, but does Windows have a different kernel? Yes, Windows has a different kernel entirely. Yeah. Mac and Linux are based off... Well, I think... Isn't Mac is based off Darwin? I can't remember exactly the whole history behind it. But they do have different kernels. Every operating system will be running off a different kernel. There's a lot of similarities because just like an engine, if I have a Corolla, if I have a Honda, if I have a Mercedes, if I have a BMW, you can generally expect the same engine parts, right? They're kind of similar. Even Linux and Android, yes. All of them have a kernel that looks kind of similar, like a car engine would. But some engines have additional parts. Some engines are built better. Some engines have better materials. Just like kernels, some of them are maintained better. Some of them have a lot of money put inside of them to be expensive, to be very performant. So all the little microcontrollers, yes, exactly. So KSJ is saying yes. All the little microcontrollers, if you're more familiar with like a motherboard. So what we have here is like, so what we can see here, right, is like, here's like your CPU. You have different ports on the back over here where I'm highlighting with the mouse. And you have different like expansion slots over here. These are all different types of expansion slots. And some of them allow you to put memory. Some of them allow you to put video cards. Some of them allow you to add additional components. And there's a lot of little chips in between. And now, the thing that makes the kernel hard to understand is because it's not physical. It exists within this memory space right here where I'm highlighting. This piece of physical hardware memory stores the kernel as it's running. So imagine like imagine a car engine inside of a trunk that you can't touch. Like it's part of something that exists after it loads. And that's why it's hard. That's why it's hard to imagine. The memory provides the spot for the kernel to sit and run. And that's kernel space. And there's different connections in here, like these little microcontrollers that KSJ is talking about, that it provides different parts of connection, like your car engine steering wheel, and if you're turning left and the wheels go that way, it's the same thing. Those connections in between is how you as a user can interact with your kernel to tell the car to do different things. And the engine responds. It gives more gas. The oil kind of moves around. It cools itself. Same thing. Kernel's doing the same thing. It's managing all that hardware for you. So it's very, very powerful. Did the CrowdStrike issue have to do with the kernel? Because CrowdStrike embeds and monitors such a low level, it's my understanding the devs sent an update with incorrect instructions, and this is called a catastrophic error since the kernel is the base of the OS for everything else. I mean, sort of, yeah. So let's kind of go back to here. This. So the way that the user space can interact and apply the CrowdStrike update would send calls directly to the kernel to do things and update the lowest levels of the operating system before the window manager loads, before your keyboard can be used, before your mouse can be moved around, before your browser is accessible. You apply the patch, and it tells the kernel to go down really deep, so before applications, before libraries, and it goes to things called system calls. And that's effectively what happens. And if you patch this area, if you patch this kernel area in such a way that it cannot load the user space, then you can't turn it on. That's how you get your blue screens. That's how you get these critical errors, that if you turn it on right away and it doesn't load the operating system, something within memory that is holding the kernel is failing to launch the Windows Manager. It's failing to launch the keyboard service. It's failing to launch the mouse service, the network service. So yes, like CrowdStrike and these antivirus, these EDR tools and endpoint detection and response, they're very effective because they're operating at a very low level to keep you safe. And I'll give you an example. Imagine you updated your car engine that you were able to turn your steering wheel all the way and keep going, and then your car wheels would turn around and damage, like they'd actually turn into the car and damage the car and destroy it. You could do that with a computer. You could tell the kernel, like, okay, I need you to use the hardware this way, and no safety protection. Just keep going. Keep throttling the power as much as you possibly can. And that's how these updates happen, where they break things entirely, is because it patches the kernel or the way the kernel loads things I shouldn't say it patches the kernel. It patches the way the kernel loads things, where it creates a conflict, and then the kernel says, wait a minute, like shut down, something is wrong, and it just doesn't load. And that's what you would kind of see. Like if you were to tell your engine to give you these unsafe controls inside of your car wouldn't work. And that's why we have certain like guardrails around the engine of what it can do. You can't turn your wheel all the way and damage the car. It won't happen. Like you'll break you'll break the ability to do it, and it'll stop there. So very similarly, like with CrowdStrike and these tools, they work well because of how deep they are in this process. But if you patch something wrong, you're in a lot of trouble. So Cross is saying, do you only have the kernel after you load the OS onto the device? So, I mean, sort of. I think what you're saying is the kernel doesn't exist on the computer hardware until you turn it on and it's on your file, like your disk, your hard drive. And then you turn it on and the hard drive loads the kernel into memory. It's part of what's called a bootloader sequence. And this is getting quite deep. We don't have to go much deeper in this because I don't want to lose everyone. But what happens is you turn the computer on and the file system receives a connection and it says, where's the bootloader? Which is effectively just like power. It's like electricity. But it's interpreted as, hey, where's the bootloader? The bootloader says, oh, I have it on the hard drive. Cool. Here's the kernel. It's part of the bootloader, put inside a memory, and now refer to memory all the rest of your hardware because it tells you what to do. It tells you what CPU stuff to do, RAM to do, graphics card, power. The kernel takes over, and that's like you turn the engine on. And if you want a better analogy, I guess, think about the bootloader as like turning the key on with your ignition. You switch that ignition on, you put the key inside the car, you turn it on, and then you have a connection to the engine, and the engine does the rest for you. But something has to ignite, and that's the power button loading with the bootloader, telling the kernel to be loaded, and now your car can run. Now your computer can run. Pretty cool stuff, isn't it? Like when you start to get really that deep. Gonna add a couple more. While that's all processing for you, I'm just gonna add a couple more people inside of Discord. 1 second. Yeah, cool. I'm glad it helped. It's hard to understand this at first, so it sounds like it's working. Yeah, cool. Good stuff. So that's effectively how you need to understand the kernel. Now, the operating system is the kernel plus the window manager and all that stuff running. Now that makes more sense when you think about how it's actually all loading underneath the hood. And the way that, excuse me, the way that the user, you, inside of the steering seat, can tell the kernel what to do is called a system call. This system call is provided to you by the kernel, and this is where you hear things like called like the Windows native API. This means that like the Windows kernel, the Linux kernel, the Mac kernel, they all have a specific way for you to tell the kernel exactly what you need it to do with the hardware. It's very, very specific. And it's specific for such a way so that you can't damage things. But sometimes it's not as secure as you wish it could be, right? That's why we have these types of vulnerabilities and things that occur. You hear like kernel errors or the ability to inject things into kernel space and stuff. There's ways to still compromise it. And this is where you learn about that as we move on. Much more advanced. That's compromising the kernel is a SOC 200 and up kind of thing. It's not within SOC 100, but you have to understand, thinking back to the car engine, that if you were to maybe add like water or sugar things, right, like to the engine, like it's something's gonna break. And it's the same kind of thing. If you were to go and inject things into the kernel in such a way, you could compromise it. So the kernel is designed very, very well that it only accepts a certain different number of ways for you to tell it what to do with the hardware. And those things are called system calls. So you're going to learn more about that as we learn about things later on, like process injection and stuff. So let's take a look at this model here. I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit. So we talked about kernel mode and kernel space. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of these different model names, but this bottom half kernel space is effectively, you cannot interact with it. However, those pipelines, see the little arrow right over here, where I'm moving with my mouse, that would be like the steering wheel connection to the kernel. And the Windows API, that system call, would be like, you can turn the wheel left, you can turn the wheel right. So very strict, stringent controls to tell the kernel what to do with the hardware. And then the hardware would turn left, turn right if this was a car engine. And if we're talking about computers, this would be the same thing, like use 10% of your CPU or 20% of your CPU. So you would tell the Windows API, like, hey, I need this much power or this much memory or these many processes and things to be able to open up this browser. And that's what the Windows API is. And we can interact with the Windows API through the window manager, through a text terminal manager. If we have the browser open over here and I open up a new tab, I am now, through a very fast process, interacting with the kernel. Right now, I just did that. I sent a Windows API call when I clicked on this little plus button here at the top. In order to open up this new tab, I needed more resources from my CPU and my memory to create this tab, store it somewhere inside of memory, and the kernel is doing all that for me. All I did was just click on that button. And this button here tells the Chrome browser to connect with the Windows API and tell the kernel what resources I need to do that action. So remember that steering wheel? That's how it all works. That's how Windows works. That's how Mac works. That's how Linux works. That's how your phone works. I guess it's just one big giant steering wheel. That's all it is, interacting with an engine. So what do you think about all that? And then we'll take a break. Yes. Yeah. So KSJ is mentioning about even lower level access, and you'll learn about that. Another Frank Herbert quote, nice. Yeah, something as simple as controlling the speed of your fans. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like you can tell the BIOS to, and a BIOS is a basic input-output system, I think, right? Yeah, basic input-out system. Just double checking. Yeah, I thought it was like operating system for. Yeah, basic input-output system. But yeah, you have like an even lower level operating system before the kernel that helps it get managed and interact with the hardware in different ways. So that is something. Very rarely are you going to have to be the one on the IT side to really kind of mess around with that, unless we're dealing with like older technology. Now for this course, we're not going to be able to interact with the BIOS on these systems because these are virtual machines inside of the browser. So we're not going to be able to actually get to that level. We'll be able to interact with the kernel inside of the cloud, that cloud computer. Is there a compiler in the kernel? Sort of. I mean, sort of. Not a compiler, I guess, like how you're thinking. So like a compiler from the application level up over here. Like if you're programming over here, like at this like Word Chrome level, and then you compile code, and that code can be compiled into machine code and assembly and very low level operations. Yes, that exists above in like the user space, and then it stores that code on the file system into an executable file. What happens is, and the kernel is actually the kernel is a compiled piece of software into an executable format. That's all what it is. Now, when the kernel loads into memory, it doesn't have a compiler in the same way, but it has the ability to direct the power and send signals that acts similar to what a compiler does, but it doesn't store anything to disk as compiled machine code as you would expect as kind of like an executable file, like a piece of software. It doesn't do that. But the kernel has its own way to compile signals to hardware as ones and zeros, like binary highs and lows of power going on, off, store state as on or off very quickly at an insane speed. So Kim sort of acts like a compiler, but not a compiler as we understand it from the application level. It acts more like a translator. And that's a little bit different. But I guess the end goal is sort of the same. I wouldn't call it a compiler though. Cool. So I guess, okay, one more thing before we break. I want to talk a little bit about some things that you're going to start seeing inside of these labs now when we move on to them. Is you will see processes and threads and memory management and registry and DLLs. And we're going to talk about them when we get to them. But just as a quick preface to that, applications are effectively, when they run, when you start up Chrome, it creates a process. And a process is just a version. It's just like an instance of Chrome running. And the registry is high above in like this application layer where we live in user space. Kind of like the dashboard of your car. You know how you can switch like your fan speeds inside your car, your music playing. You might have a little dashboard to configure things, make calls in and out. There's sort of like this configuration that lives there that you can interact with to tell the car a little bit more what to do for your preferences. Maybe you want your seat to be a certain way. The registry is like a database of configurations and preferences. And the kernel interacts with it too. And then DLLs, these are things called dynamic link libraries. And this is just a Windows thing. Mac and Linux and other systems have something kind of similar. And in order to make operating systems more performant for you, what they do is they create these files on disk called DLLs that have shared code. shared code that maybe Chrome uses the same code as Microsoft Word, and maybe Spotify, maybe all those three use the same code. So instead of creating it 3 times, they can just interact with the same shared piece of code. We'll talk more about that, but that's something also to understand. And this is all in user space now. Now we're in user space, user land. We have processes, threads, registry, DLLs. This is stuff we can interact with. Remember, like I said, the inside of the car. And we're going to go and interact with them inside of the labs as we go. So root, shoot, and leave, you're saying, so system calls are how applications, programs talk to the kernel. Yes, perfect. How does a kernel talk to applications? Same way. It goes backwards. Do you see this little model here? This is a two-way street. The kernel has to send signals back to the application through an API call, a system call. And that can look like a lot of things. It could look like window.draw pixels, like top, pixels left, pixels bottom, pixels right, and that's how you get a window. So the kernel, if I go and I move my mouse, like if I were to go, see how I'm like dragging this? I'm creating like a highlight. I'm moving the mouse to tell the kernel that, hey, you need to now send a signal to the screen that you are highlighting this increasing value going left. So it's a back and forth process. So I'm going left and then I'm going right. And then when it stops, it now stores this state, this highlighted state is now stored inside of memory that I have that much highlighted that I can now interact with. And that's how you can right click and you can copy and do all that stuff. So root and shoot, it's a two-way operation. Cool. Nice. Okay. Take a little break. Get back to it. Hope you're all enjoying all this Windows stuff. Now, as you go through the course, you can try and answer these questions. These are questions for you to answer as you go, okay? And then we're going to jump into the Navigating Windows Lab. Okay, I'll be back. Oops, wrong got that over there. There we go. Okay, I'll be back. Okay. All right. Let's do this. Cool. All right. Let's get back into it. So now we're actually going to start hopping into the labs. You go ahead and spit up your Windows workstation. Let that load in the meantime. Might need to kick this back halfway. If anyone has any preferred music streams as well too, as long as they're stream safe, DRM free and all that stuff, let me know. I can switch it over. Some lo-fi? Yeah. Twitch and streamer. No copyright, lo-fi beat. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Now we're talking. Okay. 179, Windows Detection Engineer course starting. The SOC 100-5 will be over in March for Detection Engineering Fundamentals, but the Detection Engineering 100 course right now is already out, and it's just an active development with things being added really soon, as I understand. All right, so let's go ahead and connect our Windows workstations. Does everyone have their VMs up? Anyone still loading? I recommend some good hot tea with all the talking, by the way. Anyone has to do a lot of talking at once. Hot tea with honey. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with the absolute basics of the Windows desktop. So first things first, kind of a little high-level overview. Remember that the Windows desktop is effectively, it's a different way to operate with the kernel. This is a window manager that allows us to interact and move around our mouse on the desktop and open up different things. Very similarly, we have a command line version, a text-based version to interact with the different ways the kernel can be interacted with, different system API calls as we go. So let's take a look in the bottom left for all of you new Windows users. There's a lot of personal Mac users, but they haven't really messed around with Windows. But your start menu button, that's the left button. You're going to hear this called the start button, the Windows button, Windows menu button, Windows icon, a lot of different ways. We want to go and just hit that on the bottom left with the left click of the mouse. Okay, so you don't have access to the course modules. You should. I swore I enrolled you. Yeah, shoot an email over with your email for your course. I thought I enrolled you. I'll take a look after, see what's going on. But we can go to the start menu on the bottom left, right? So this start menu over here is essentially like your, I don't know, maybe like a central hub for accessing applications, recent documents, power options. This allows you to interact with like your file system, your settings. You can call up different applications to be loaded from here effectively. So this is a visual GUI-based way to interact with installed applications and different settings on your system by clicking around. That's what the start menu does. Like, it leads you to those types of things. Now on the bottom, we've got this this taskbar. Okay. So the bottom we have this taskbar. If we right-click this, and this taskbar are where these icons are pinned right now, and this search menu box here in the bottom left. And if we right-click it, we also get this context menu. And these context menus allow us to customize or change things. Print, so your connection got completely cut off. You never got to see the part where we access the VM. So what you want to do is you want to go to the beginning of the course, and you want to go to the introduction, and there's a lab VM and hours that shows you how to walk through it. And what you want to do is click on the left-hand side here for everyone and open up your VM panel. And you want to start up the systems. It'll take longer for the first time, and then once it loads, you'll hit the connect button. And the connect button will open up a new tab. Just a quick little refresher in that. So you want to right-click that. And then from here, we can do a couple different things. We can change what types of toolbars we want down here. Maybe we want like links, and see how links now appears here in the bottom. The search option here in the bottom left, we can change it to hidden, so it gets it like right out of the way, which I personally like. You can go to change that to just show the search icon, so you can like click on that, and now it appears as search. So there's lots of different ways for you to customize things. You can also control all of your windows. You can cascade them here, so they all kind of appear together. You can show windows stacked together. You can show windows side by side. So this allows you to interact with your desktop in a really quick, handy way. And you see, like, I haven't had to even use the keyboard yet. And this is one of the powerful features of having a window-based operating system, because arguably that would be a lot harder to accomplish on text with the terminal. So quite a few different things. You can also you can uncheck to lock the taskbar, and you can make it real big. Okay. You can even left click and hold it and move it around the screen. So you can kind of move from top, kind of make this almost like a Mac operating system by throwing it at the top if that's what you prefer. And then you can lock it back when you're ready. And then if you right click it and you go to taskbar settings, there's even more settings you can customize. And this is, again, just for configuration-based purposes. You can interact with all of those things that I just mentioned, but on the menu itself. So pretty neat. I mean, at one point in time, this was like a huge technological accomplishment, just so you know. Crazy to think about, but that was like a massive thing. So now we can take a look at how to explore this operating system more visually. And through that, we can actually use this thing called the Windows File Explorer. And you might just hear that as being called Explorer. So bottom left, it should be pinned over here. And if not, you can go inside of your start menu And you can go and look for it over here. So if we type in, oh, actually it's right over here, pinned in this area, but Princess tries no system on my end, even after selecting the launch group. Oh, just give it a moment, Prin. It'll take like a couple minutes on the first time. Give it some time. After you hit launch group. After that, it'll go faster. So now we want to go to, so we'll click on File Explorer over here, and that's how we open up File Explorer. Now, it's also pinned down here in the bottom, and that's where you can go back to the Start menu, and you can right-click. Wait, there we go. Right-click that, and you can see ways to unpin it, resize it, and you have different ways to make it more accessible for you. And if we also have a middle mouse button, right? If we have one of those, it's actually a handy little shortcut. You can go and middle mouse click File Explorer. On the bottom, you can actually open up a lot of them. And you could even do some fancy stuff by going over here and kind of showing them all side by side. Pretty handy. So some little shortcuts, and you can adjust how these things all look together. Again, you can cascade them as well too. Show them stacked. Show them side by side. And then you can right click and also show the desktop and kind of clear it up right away for you. And if you hover your mouse, once you open up multiple applications, they kind of all appear here. And you can choose the one that you want. So pretty self-explanatory. It's a lot of just kind of like clicking around, seeing what these features do. Now, what we want to do is we can open up the control panel. So there's a couple different ways to actually get over there. You can go through the Start menu over here, and this is going to open up this additional window that allows you to interact with your computer settings. Now, the control panel is actually more of like an outdated. This is an older legacy tool within Windows that's sort of like persisting around. Now they actually have settings. That's sort of like the preferred option. I'll put them side by side so you can see what I mean. You can go show Windows stacked, right? So this will help you when you're doing like your screen sharing presentations. You can also drag them from the top, this title bar. Bring them to the right, and it should allow you to mount it over there and dock it. That's called docking your application. Now that they're docked, you can actually do some fancy things like that. So you can see that the control panel has like these old looking features. And remember I said Windows XP? How it looked? Oops. Yeah. Like it still kind of looks like... Okay, one second. Let's go back. There we go. It still kind of looks like this, right? Like these icons look very similar. And yeah, like as KS is saying, I mean, I still prefer my classic control panel too. I do. Now, Windows 11 has gotten better, but you're going to see, and that's sort of the weird thing with Windows, is you're going to see a lot of like old legacy, still supportive tools built in because of compatibility. Mac is a different type of operating system. Mac doesn't care about that. They say, no, like you got to move on with the times. We're giving you a whole new way of doing things. Depends what you like. Depends what you're interested in and how you want to operate your computer. And then you have Linux that is just fully forever going to look the way that you want it to look. But that's how you can find some different ways to interact with your system. And see, like you can go through the control panel. You can actually click on hardware from here. And you can go to power options. And this is where you're telling the kernel to change the state of how your power is being used, like how your power supply is being drawn. So here is a direct way of showing like a system call being made to your kernel to tell your power supply to run in a higher performance mode and your hardware as well. You can change the plan setting around. You can click on advanced features, and this is effectively me now telling, right, like hard disk, turn off hard disk after never. So I'm telling the kernel to tell my hard drive to never turn off at this point. So pretty cool, right? Like we have this visual dashboard of interacting with that engine we were talking about. Very similarly, when you're driving your car, you have your dashboard and you have your configuration to go and interact with how you want the engine to perform. We have a pedal, you have more gas and such. Also, thanks for all the, yeah, a couple more followers kick in. Prin, Rzone, and SGA. Thanks for the follows, all. Appreciate it. Cool. I see someone took a clip. So for those of you that are new to Twitch, you can take clips of like when I'm doing my stream. If there's something that you wanted to review, or something that you preferred to hear, like instead of going through the video again, kind of finding it and whatnot, and you can actually take clips on Twitch. I forgot to mention that. I'm sorry. But that should help you. Now, Windows 10 has this thing called the, and if we wanted to close these windows, we can just hit the X in the top right. We can minimize them, maximize them, different ways to interact. Now we have this action center in the bottom right, and this is now like a newer Windows feature. This is where you can see all of your notifications. So if you click on the bottom right, this action center over here allows you to immediately get to maybe some more important things like your network settings, night light, and whatnot as well too. You also have your ability to click around this area, and you can interact with like your network settings right away over here. A little computer kind of looks a little like a little computer and a plug icon. Your audio is down here as well, and this is where you can see what's going on with your network interface. So we'll learn about all those as well. That's effectively, that's Windows, you know, and this is why it's easy. Imagine you could give this just about anyone and then walk them through it like I did in 10 minutes, maybe over here, tops. And that would be enough for them to go and start moving their mouse around and open up the Edge browser and open up a Windows File Explorer and kind of go through what they're looking for. Nice and easy, right? You can see why Windows has become popular. And this is a bit of a far cry from this and that. So, quite different. Yeah, this is the Edge browser, just fired up. Cool. All right, so that takes us through the first lab over here. That's the lab of navigating Windows, and for all those with the course access, the steps are here. And as I go through them, they're going to be like a little bit different. I'm going to cover essentially everything the lab is covering, but I may go off a little bit and show additional things and ask you guys questions like I've done with the previous lectures, because everything that I talked about with like the kernel and everything, I think I went into it much deeper, I think, than these lectures did. So that's also the benefit of kind of being in a live class. You can have more time to go into these discussions and such. Anyone have any questions on navigating the Windows desktop? Is it anyone's first time using Windows? Because sometimes it is. That'd be a question I'm curious about. Yeah, no, not for KS over there. So at the end of every single lab, for those of you in the course, you will see that there are additional questions to answer. Now, I'm not going to provide those answers to you. These are questions for you to think about and then make some submissions. And these are critical thinking. Right, so like analyzing the shift from the traditional control panel to Windows settings, What underlying design philosophy does this transition signify? Just to get you to think a little bit. Because it may seem minimal, but it all adds up. Good stretch. Cool. Okay. No questions. I see you coming up. Take a look in Discord. All right. Let's move on to the file system. So we're on to the second lab over here. Pretty straightforward. And these entry labs really are they're easier for a reason, right? Like kind of just like slowly getting you into it, because truthfully, you might have a user telling you, like, they might have clicked in the taskbar and they might have done like this, right? They might have like grabbed all of their windows and maybe they cascaded it all. You might need to know what to do. So, little things. So let's actually look into exploring the file system at this point in time. So the file system is effectively how all of your, how the disk, so like your hard drive, is storing data in a very structured way for you to interact with specific things, like a file. And a file is, if you'd like to imagine it for a moment, is sort of like the representation of this piece of paper. This piece of paper we know it's this file, if you will, is made out of paper with text on it. Something we can hold, we can touch in reality. Computer can't do that. So a computer tries to create a representation of that file. And what it looks like is just data, binary data, a lot of like those highs and lows we talked about before, just like ones and zeros, kind of stored in a certain state inside of your hard drive. And then there's a beginning and a stop, there's a beginning and an end to that series of data. And then the Windows operating system says, okay, I now understand that that is a file, like that is a representation of a piece of paper on the disk. And we can interact with those files visually through the GUI, through the graphical user interface, through something like File Explorer. And these things aren't real, right? Like these are all representations, like I said. So there's this PC over here. When I click on this PC, I'm not actually like clicking on the computer. It's sort of like, you remember, like, I think what was that movie way back? I think it was like Dude, Where's My Car? Showing my age there, but or was it Zoolander? Yeah, it was Zoolander, right? It says like the files are in the computer. I think it was Zoolander. The files are in the computer. Yeah, it is Zoolander. Okay, so kind of like the same thing. They're like, oh my god, like the files are in the computer. They think it's physically in the computer, but it's not. It's like a representation of what it actually is. So we can use the File Explorer to access a couple different things. We have this shortcut menu over here called Quick Access. See, that's your favorite movie. Yeah, it's a good movie. They don't make them like they used to anymore. That's for sure. So the File Explorer is your ability to interact with that representation of data, as I mentioned. And this quick access menu here at the top left allows us to quickly get to certain areas, like our desktop, a folder called Documents, a folder called Downloads, a folder called Pictures. And these have icons next to them to give you a visual cue of what they are. And what these actually look like, if we go to that local disk, this local disk at this point, this C drive, is a letter. It's a letter assigned to the file system, noting that our hard drive has been formatted with the Windows file system. And it goes deeper than that, but for what you need to know at this point in time is that it's a letter to allow us to reference the drive quickly. And this comes from the command line days. Like if I look over here, you can see C:\\, and we'll get to that later. But that's why you see that there. You see the C. But this local disk here allows us to now navigate the file system visually. We can see a lot of different folders. We have lab data here for the course. We have program files. We have a Windows folder that has a bunch more folders that Windows relies on. And what you need to know this time is this folder over here is called the users folder. So the users folder is, this is a folder that stores all of the user profiles. So administrator, default, public, CI-Ray, KSJ, Prin, 179, EBA, like those your user names are all given a profile folder over here inside of the users folder inside of Windows. And if I go to kind of click around and I go deeper, let's go inside the administrator folder. And I go down into like administrators, like what has the administrator downloaded? It's stored inside of this downloads folder. And if I click at the top, you'll see that it actually changes. Changes into this thing called the address bar. And the address bar is effectively where it is stored, like where it is stored on the disk. And like I mentioned, right, the disk is referenced by that C letter drive. So this is the C drive. And what you can see is that every folder is separated by a slash. I can actually zoom in on that. I've never actually tried to zoom in on that before. So you know what I will do is I'll open up this. Properties, and I'm going to go to font. Cool. So the C drive is this is the disk we're operating with that's been formatted with Windows. And then the folders are separated by this /, like the users, administrator, and this is an address on disk to let us know where we are. And we can use the file explorer to see where we're at on the disk. Like we go through this directory, or we can do it on the command line. Command line, you can see this little kind of like underscore that's sitting there. That allows us to reference that where we're at on the disk and start entering commands to it, which we'll do later. So the downloads folder is where we're at. And let's say we wanted to navigate backwards. We would delete that folder out of the address bar. And you can see now more options have appeared to us. And if I get rid of that /, it doesn't know what to do. So the /, like I said, is it's letting Windows know, like, hey, I'm trying to reference a folder from this current directory. So now if I wanted to, I could maybe go to documents from here. And I could go press Control A to select all, or I could right click and do select all. And then go to right click again and hit copy. And then I can delete that, and I can go back here and I can paste it in. And now I can use a copy paste feature to kind of traverse the file directories by using this address bar. Make sense? Easy, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my, I'm going to click on administrator, and then I'm going to go to downloads. Rather, sorry, I'm going to go to documents. Nothing inside there. I'm just trying to find like a file, help. Actually, why is that file there? It's a good question. What is that? Oh yeah, that's for later. Okay. Okay. Copy that. So we find a file inside of administrator. So users, administrator, and then there's actually a file in here called help. Kind of a little secret Easter egg. I can go and I can right click and copy this now. And then I can go inside of my downloads. I can paste it here. So this is how I move files around. And if I left click it, I can right click again and I can press delete. And you can do all these things with the keyboard as well. And then we can do things like cut and paste. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to copy this again. And I'm going to put it inside of downloads, paste it. And then I'm going to right click it. I'm going to cut it this time. And cut, you see how it kind of got like turned translucent. And I'll go inside of the documents folder and I'm going to paste it over here. Now it appeared here, but if I go back to downloads, it's gone. So cut and paste actually deletes it. It removes it from somewhere else. Now, let's say I went inside of my documents and I wanted to replace that file. Maybe I wanted to go, let's copy it again. Then go inside of documents and I'm going to paste it now. You can right click anywhere here. I can paste and I'll get a prompt. So it's saying copying one item from administrator to documents. The destination already has a file named help.txt. So we have a couple different options. We can replace it, we can skip it, or we can compare info for both files. So if you compare it, you can get a quick glance of like what's the size? Talk about file sizes later. File size, the date, and to see if there's actually any differences. You can cancel that. And let's just say we wanted to replace it. You can see that it actually did replace the file. Convoid. So you thought, wait, hold on a second. Prin. Everything under quick access has nothing to do with the C drive. If it's correct. Correct. Yes. Yes. Right. Prin. The quick access is like a bookmark. Imagine like you bookmarked it for later to come back to, whether that's like a physical bookmark, like a post-it between pages in a book, or bookmarks on a browser you might be used to, a favorite. It's just a quick way to quickly get to it. So if I clicked downloads, I would immediately get to the downloads directory of my current user. Same with pictures. And you see if I click on documents over here, I can see help now over here. And if I go to my, I can go back there the real way. I go to users, administrator, documents, and now you can see help. So it's the same location. This, and so these are just like bookmarked quick access abilities. So Gunvoid, yeah. So you taught to Jeff, a buddy of mine, Windows key plus R shutdown, time 0, and actual TAC S for a shutdown instead of reboot. Yeah. I mean, kinda. If you want to have fun with it, yeah, sure. You might be able to run. Here, I'll put inside of the other chat. So you could run that somewhere as like an individual command. Stuff it somewhere inside of an executable file to make the computer shut down in someone, and then she's legit. She's a legit hacker at that point. Not yet, but close. She's getting there. She's beginning to believe. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead now and what else do we have to do here? Yeah, so let's go and delete files. So let's say we wanted to delete this help file because we don't need it anymore. We can right click this and we can go to delete. And it's gone, right? You think it's gone? But it's not actually gone. It's actually going to be inside of this thing called the recycle bin. And Mac has this as well too. Yep. So the recycle bin is essentially this like spot. This stores, and it doesn't actually store the deleted file. So who wants to take a stab at this? Do you think that the recycle bin stores this deleted file? Like the file now belongs in the recycle bin? Remember what I said before about like a representation of things? Yep. Doubt. Who else? What do y'all think's happening? Yeah. Right. Right. So, you know, deep under the hood, what's happened is there's a flag that's been changed in the file to say that this file is now, you can now overwrite it. And that's what Yard and Sam is saying over there. It doesn't technically belong in the recycle bin. It's just, it's been marked on disk. Yeah. So remember, right, Windows is, it's a representation of how the data is structured at a given state or a given point in time. So to be efficient, instead of moving files all around and kind of stuffing them in different places, that would burn up. NTFS is sort of not honest sometimes. Yeah. NTFS. It's not bad. Works well enough. But yes. You could you have to think about it from an efficiency perspective. Imagine we were constantly moving files all over the disk back and forth whenever we needed it. Like a piece of paper. In reality, this is easy, right? Like I take this piece of paper and I move it over here and I move it over there as I need it for different things. That's simple. But if you kept doing that millions of times on your disk, your hard drive, you're going to wear it out. So developers have to come up with very creative solutions to optimize your hardware and use it to the longevity, like to the best of its possible longevity. And that's one way, is you can just like change the state of things without really moving it around all over the place and say, hey, yes, this file can now be overwritten. So now if we wanted to delete files, if you will, so we can actually empty the recycle bin. So now these files won't actually be accessible anymore through the operating system in the ways that we're familiar with at this point in time. However, I mean, we'll get to that maybe way later, but we can still technically access that file. And this is how you get into things like digital forensics. So yes, while we're early on in these labs, I'm trying to stoke the way that you're thinking to get you to think about things deeper than what they really are. Not just, oh, click this, click that, move that. That's pointless. You could follow directions like that anytime you want with a tutorial. So understanding that this is a representation of the data in this recycle bin, and now that I've erased it, now I've changed the state again by adding another marker, another flag to that piece of data, saying that through these methods, like clicking around and accessing the file explorer, I shouldn't be able to now interact with that file. But the file is still there. The file is still there on disk, and that is how we can get to Gunvoid Walker's browser history. That's how that's going to happen. That is how browser history is recovered. That's how you get into digital forensics. That's how you get into all of that fancy security stuff, backups, disk recovery. That's how when you take your computer to Best Buy, your laptop, you know, and you're like, oh my god, don't look at my stuff. Well, your stuff's all there. CI, I mean, not flags like that, no. So I should maybe change the way I'm explaining because we're still early on. Imagine that I have just changed the state. Remember we talked about like the zeros and ones? On, off? Everything is just a whole bunch of zeros and ones. So that file that started off from start and finish with zeros and ones all along the way in a certain state and flow, we told the kernel to go and change that level on disk. We're going to flip one of those zeros to a 1. Or change those ones to a 0. And then it's represented really quickly like, oh, I guess we can't access it anymore. But it's still there. It's still there in the same position. It hasn't been used yet. So that's how you need to think about it. We need to always go back to that representation we learned of the kernel and the system calls and interacting with hardware. And that everything is just this giant series of zeros and ones. So we've changed a binary flag. So it's not that it's just not referenced anymore, Gun. It's that we've changed one of those zeros and ones so that we can't see it through the file explorer and we can't see it inside of the recycle bin. And it's now sitting on disk, and the disk says, okay, cool, I can use the space now. So if I get around to that space and I overwrite it with another file, well, doesn't matter. So that's what you've done. You've told the kernel to tell the disk this area is overwritable. So you might use some of it here, some of it later, but then that's where forensics comes in. And forensics can maybe look through your disk at like a magnified level and say, oh, there's a bunch of zeros and ones here that actually does look like the piece of a file because it wasn't fully overwritten. That's when things get interesting. That's when you all can become hackers. Hack the planet. That's where it all starts to get magical. Okay, let's move on. I'm trying to provide some more general excitement to navigating the file system for everyone over here because you still need to go through it. Cool. So you're saying, Gun, that we still have to sort of guess sometimes when we're covering, yeah. And then Yarden, you're asking, is there software that will overwrite after deletion? Yes, 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 yes. So that you might hear something called like dban. Boot and nuke. So this is something. Is that actually? I guess that site has changed, hasn't it? Yeah, Derek's boot and nuke. But this is where you have software that will effectively go. There's also like this. It's called shredding. Like you're shredding. Okay, yeah, that's a good way to think about it. So in real life, we have file shredders, right? File shredders, you can put this piece of paper, and I can shred it through, and it's harder to recover. You can do the same thing with your file system. You can shred it. You can shred it around with tools. And then the computer is better at us. We still have to get that paper recycled and use it again, but the computer can take bits of the shredded file and take a little bit here, a little bit there, and still use it. Just the same for other things. So we have some files that you want to shred like crazy, like Gunvoid's browser history. So we want to shred that history when they're done deleting it so that we can't see what's inside there. Apparently, or allegedly, I should say. I don't know what's inside Gunvoid's history. Now, CI, will the advanced courses be months long too? Yeah, all SOC 100, 1 and 2 and all that stuff is going to be, we're doing this for 5 months. The advanced course is like CDA. CDA, as you can see, you're in the live class, right? It is a multi-month course. Now we're gonna be making more advanced content around as like a 1 week intensive type of course kind of stuff. Because at that point, after you've been through SOC 100 and 200, you don't need like a multi-long course. You just need focused areas. But DFIR and all those other things are going to feel like several weeks of courses as well, yeah. Brand marketer, disk sanitization. Yes, exactly. It renders the files unrecoverable. And it shreds them just like a paper shredder in real life. Cool. Yeah, cool. Yeah, all the steps are there. More questions for you as well, too. Next, we're going to move on to user accounts. So super simple still so far, right? Kind of moving around, navigating. But we want to get into account management and permissions. So let's go ahead and do that. Did I close my VM? I think I did, didn't I? Cool. So we're going to take a look at the GUI and the command line way to do this in this lab. And if this is your first time the command line, we'll go through it slowly, make sense of it. But we're going to come back to the command line a lot more after. That's going to be a tomorrow thing at this point. So introductions. Yes. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's do this. What we want to do is this is actually Windows Server. This is not like a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 box, because Server you can have like this as a virtual machine. You don't have to worry about licensing for this intended use case. So we're going to do this a little bit differently than you would with your local workstation if you have Windows 10 or 11 at home. But eventually you can get there the same way. And you could right click this and go to computer management. That's one way to do it. Let that load. The other way is to go to Windows and go to, where's Windows Server Manager? They want you to try Azure. Of course they do. All right, so don't show that message again. Close that. And you could go over here and you could go to Tools. And you can go to Computer Management just the same way. Same thing. So Computer Management is where we can get a very high-level quick overview of things like our tasks being scheduled, Windows Event Viewer, shares, so like file shares that you might see inside of a network. If you worked in a company and you have like your H drive or your I drive where IT has said, oh, that's all your stuff, your shared stuff. Well, it's over here. You can set those things up. You can also go to set up your local groups and users, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to go and set up a user over here really shortly. You can also look at your performance, your device manager that has all those drivers that we talked about. So let's take a look, for example, like display adapter is probably easy for you to kind of work with, or disk drive this time. Where's that model we had? We'll go to kernel space, user space. I should say Windows, so we don't get something in Linux. Why is that so blurry? There you go. Okay. So user mode drivers and Windows API. That's those system calls that we were talking about over here. Let's go back. And if I wanted to, we'll do this another way. We'll go to control panel. Remember, we were just there and we went to power options. Where I saw it before. Yeah. Hardware, power options. Change plan settings, go to advanced. So, okay, imagine I wanted to tell my hard drive to never turn off, right? So the reason that I can do that is if I go inside here, I have this device manager thing of all my drivers. And that is where, I'll bring this up ahead. These user mode drivers, where we can interact with, give stored states and configurations for how our drivers should be telling the hardware to be utilized, which the kernel directly references. It kind of reads that state, that configuration, which is stored more so in the registry, which we'll get to later. This is second to the Windows API calls. Like if I remember I said, if I'm opening up new tabs, then you're going to see that the kernel is being referenced and interacted with. Well, the device manager is where we can interact with these drivers. Like the, this is a disk driver, and it has certain policies and details and things that we can interact with. These drivers contain information for how the disk should be configured and ran. And us telling us to never shut off the disk would be using the disk driver to give that information over to the hard disk. It's like a formatted way to do it. So drivers are quite important. Drivers provide us with an ability to have a stored state for how the hardware should behave. And we can change driver information or tweak it to some degree. And we tell the kernel to then reference that driver within those limitations of being able to like turn the steering wheel left, turn it right kind of thing. So that's where this comes into play under like computer management. Now, what we want to do is we're under user accounts and permissions today. So we'll go inside under users. So local users and groups, go to users. And let's say we wanted to create a new user. So go to new user. We're going to right click anywhere in this white space. And we can select new user. And we can go into, we'll give it a username. Let's call it like SOC student. Call it whatever you'd like. You can leave full name description alone. And we have some options over here for setting password management. So we can say that the password must change at logon. So if any of you have been in a company and you logged on for the first time, or you logged in and it's like, hey, you have to change your password, this is where that configuration occurs. You can also say that the user can never change their password and that it never expires, or you can disable the account. So when employees are being terminated, or maybe you're changing account positions, you would do this through this type of setting. You disable them. So I'm going to uncheck all that stuff for now, just so it's nice and easy. We'll give it a password. And I'm going to write the password up here just for, I'm just going to say password is like SOC student 99, so that you can see it as I'm typing it. Because when I start typing, you're going to notice that it's blocked off. So it's invisible. We can't see it. Cool. So I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'll say create. Really? What is the default palette? I guess it's been changed on this. It's definitely over 7. Weird. Okay, well, I'm just going to say, let's give it a password of Fairmont 55. Okay. And what I'm doing over here to kind of go faster on that is I'm doing Control A, Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. Just to, we'll get to that later, but I'm just kind of going a little bit faster on you. So I can paste the password in there. So that should be fine. Cool. We'll hit close. And now we see that SOC student has appeared. I'm not actually sure why the other password didn't work. Kind of weird. It's the same kind of length, really. Anyways, it just must mean maybe we set up a password policy here that I'm not familiar with, but we now have a user account on the system. So now if we wanted to have a new employee work with us, we would set them up the same way. And let's say we wanted to add them to a certain group. So I would go to groups, and you can see all the currently existing ones. By default, you get a bunch. These are just like common best practices user groups. So let's say I wanted to add SOC student to administrators. I probably shouldn't do that, but for all intents and purposes and things, I could now double click this. So double left click, and you get this window, and I can say add. And notice how it gives you some more pop-ups over here. So it's saying that this is an object. So it's now referring to these things as objects. And from this location. And if I click on locations, you can see that this is actually the computer. The computer is called EC2 Amazon V or AMAZ V33QHFK. And this is just a default name. The computer was generated with a default name. And this is a common naming convention. You'll see like EC2, which is the Amazon Cloud instance kind of name, and AMZ, AMAZ for Amazon. So this is our available option to choose from. If I hit check names, nothing happens. But if I type maybe like SOC, and I hit check names, nothing happens. So let's try SOC student, check names. And now it found it. Found it right away. Now, truthfully, we could have just typed out the computer name with a backslash, but that's a lot of referencing. So remember how we talked about folders being on disk and represented with that slash to denote where the folders are? Similarly, Windows is also formatted in a way where we can represent where a user account exists on the stored information and separating things by that slash. So that slash, you're going to see a lot. That's effectively how you're splitting or saying like this object over here, this piece of data, which is a computer name, and then the slash after it provides all the possible different names inside. So I remember when we went inside here to local disk, users, administrator, and remember when I hit backslash, I kept saying, yes, I kept saying forward slash. I live too much in the Linux world. Sorry. I hit backslash, and you go inside here, and you can see now these are all of the available folders beyond the administrator folder. Similarly, where was that? Context menu here. Similarly, this backslash over here is saying these are all the available usernames after the computer name. So you can see the structure, computer name, backslash, usernames. So it's directly referenceable from that computer name as like an object. We'll get to that much more in the Windows Enterprise and domain and stuff. But you can see how things are actually structured. You're starting to see some overlap. And if I were to delete that, and remember, go back to SOC, it's not enough for Windows to be able to determine what it is. So you can kind of like keep going. Maybe SOC S, still no. SOC ST, no. You can see, right? It's not specific enough. It requires the full context of what the object name is. In this case, SOC student. So it's quite strict. And remember we talked about those guardrails with like the kernel and how you can work with it, the system calls. You'll notice the more you're working with an operating system and configuring it, there are these guardrails for a reason. It has to be very specific, just like the password I couldn't put in. So now we'll hit OK. And now we can see that the SOC student has been added to the administrator group, but this is still not confirmed. I still have to actually confirm it. And I can hit apply, which right now it'll be in effect. But still allows me to make some changes if I need to. Now, if I press OK, and we can see SOC student over here, and if I go back to them and I double click them, you can see what they have as like profile information. So general, member of, profile, environment. There's a lot of different ways to configure a user. In this case, we can go to member of. We can see so SOC student is a member of the administrators. Now I can go ahead and I can now remove them from here as well. So there's different ways you can do it because you might need them at different times. It's just a matter of convenience. Now, let's go ahead and... is everyone tracking with that? Makes sense? Basic user account management, putting users inside of... We can go inside here, kind of like making a file. We can create new users. Straightforward. Anyone unclear? Cool. Now, we can do the same thing. We can also create groups the same way. But let's actually go, because it doesn't really get much more complicated than that. It's just kind of clicking around. You can see it's there to be easy. Now let's take a look at how to do that on the command line. So what I can do, and we're going to come back to the command line later. Just for now, I'm going to just kind of walk through some kind of simple commands. Like, what would this look like if we did it ourselves? So I'm going to go and actually delete SOC student real quick. And I'm going to dock that here and put that on this side, just so we can kind of see this happening in real time. I would be using some more advanced commands. I'd have to use a command like net user and SOC student with Fairmont 55 add. So remember what I said, right? Like when we're back in the command line world, you have to memorize this. You have to know these commands, or you have to look it up in documentation. But the GUI, you start to see there is some benefit for it for someone when they first get started. Caveat, when they first get started. Now I can go back here and I can right click this and I can refresh, and you can see SOC student has appeared. Now arguably this is much faster because on the command line, I can script this, I can automate it, and that's what we're going to get into much later. Now if I wanted to change the password around, I could do something like net user SOC student and go with Fairmont 99, and this is now going to update the password for me. So again, that's not complex, right? It's just knowing commands, knowing language, terms and definitions to know what to do and what to read. Now I could do something like I can maybe make them inactive. So if I were to go inside of SOC student, right, I can maybe go to net user SOC student active. No. So now they're disabled. So now I've disabled a user. We're hacking. You can go copy that. So you can go run around, cause some havoc on your network and disable user accounts if you're an admin. Well, I mean, not really, but you know what I mean. And then go to net user SOC student active. Yes. And now, sorry. Now you can see that they're reactivated. So some basic command line. Now, I mean, this is how I prefer to interact with the operating system, is on the command line, because you have a lot more flexibility, right? You can see I'm still in one space with commands that I say I need to quickly adapt. If I were to do that here, I would have to double click, do this, that, go here, do that, this. Like, there's a lot of things you have to kind of click around. You could do that very fast in the command line, and that's where it starts to become more important. But for simple administration, the GUI is good for you. Now, I'm going to run a new command called CLS, and this is to clear the screen. This is now clearing my terminal for me to work with. And just for good measure, to clean up our users as well, we can run a command like net user SOC student delete. Inside here, we'll right click that and refresh. Gone. Now, if I were to kind of walk through what this command is, you can see if I type in net, right? I could do net help. And what this is doing is allowing us to interact from a command line perspective with the command to administer users. And when you're not sure what a command is or what it does, you can always kind of look it up over here, look up online documentation. And if I did net user, it kind of just goes right away. Like, it tells us who are the users on the accounts. Net user question mark. And this is where you start to see what options you have. And that's where you saw like active, times, delete. And this just means like kind of like put the password in. We'll get to all that. I don't want to overwhelm yet. But you can see it's quite... There's a lot of things I could do very quickly on the command line versus navigating here. But that's effectively a user account creation and group management at a high level. Make sense? I can't wait to get to Linux. Linux is gonna be good. Any questions at all that? That was good. Is Mac OS harder to learn? Than Windows? Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to Linux. It's built off of, remember we talked about the kernels, how they kind of were derived? We had like the Unix kernel, and we got the Linux, we got the Mac. They're simpler operating systems at a high level. However, yeah, it's kind of like it will really depend on your preferences and your ability to work with things. Like, Windows has a very Windows way of doing things, just as Mac does. Linux is arguably the simpler, easier to have full visibility on and manage once you know how to work with it, but it has a steeper learning curve initially. Windows is easier to learn at first, but it gets incredibly complex. Windows is arguably the hardest to manage, and that's not a good thing. It's because, remember we talked about compatibility, right? Like, we looked at the control panel versus settings. We put this here, and we look at settings. Windows is still living in this world of multiple versions still being supported. That creates a lot of complexity, And because, so that's one problem. The second thing is Windows provides a lot of customization to provide that backwards compatibility to function. And through that, Windows gets a lot more convoluted and complex out of just that I guess necessity of design to support so many older versions and things, that it's harder to learn and master because of all the different ways that it needs to support all these different things. Whereas Linux is effectively like the same, you're going to see when we get to it, it's the same text-based type of operating system, very simply built, that has been essentially the same way for a long time. Windows has changed quite drastically in terms of what it looks like and how it functions. There's still like the registry and things in the back end that have remained the same, but the visual representation and the degree of flexibility and customization is just so much more layered and complex that it's harder to keep hold of. Mac is sort of like in the middle, because it's similar to Linux, but it's not, and has a different way of operating. And because of Mac being able to provide such more power, like from the GUI and different user customization, and their ability to work directly with the hardware, that's why like you buy a MacBook with Mac OS to work on Mac preferred hardware. That's different than Windows. Windows is built to be a lot more available to anyone. So their ability to work with hardware is pretty straightforward. But Mac has, because they can specialize the hardware that they prefer, they can really get into that kernel space with the hardware and really utilize and optimize their hardware in ways because it's specific to that hardware. It's written and intended to work with it to that degree. So you get a little bit more complexity and difficulty in that regard, because there's just more you can do. Not to say that Windows can't do that, but Windows is simpler to get to those features, and having to learn all the different hardware and how to optimize it creates unnecessary complexity. So it's kind of like you just need to do a little bit of it, and you get the output that you need for apps and games and etc. But Mac goes layers deeper for like a lot of tweaking and tuning and optimization for specific hardware only. So in that way it can be hardware. That way it can be harder. That way it can be harder. Mac has better battery life. Their batteries are really good, and the operating system can utilize the resources better because they know, like, it's very well planned. This is what I mean. Like, this is where it starts to get more complex with Mac, when it becomes like hardware operating. But from user administration, Mac is very simple. Same with Linux. Like security stuff wise, IT, Mac and Linux is really, really simple. Windows is not. And then Windows gets easier at the hardware level versus Mac gets much harder. But yes, you know, like Cap's saying, not really harder, just a different flavor. Pretty much. It's like apples and oranges, you know? They're still a fruit. They look, taste, and function a little bit differently. Pros and cons to them all. And yes, you know, KS is saying Linux overcomes that by using distros. Yeah, Linux tries to make these things called distributions, or distros, that are pre-packaged, pre-built, pre-configured to act like a version of Windows, or act like a version of Mac, or act like a version of a security tool. That's why you heard of like Kali Linux. Stuff like that. So that's effectively, yeah, so that's user accounts. I think, do we have enough time for one more? I think so. Okay, look at next. I don't know if we have enough time for one fully. We're cut off at 2. I think I'll get up to like halfway through the lab. Maybe. Kind of go from there. Okay. Right. Yeah. So just as Jay's saying in chat, that's what I meant, right? Like, there's so much more that Apple and Mac can do to optimize that battery because they're involved in every step along the way, from supply chain to the hardware to the operating system. Like, every single thing can be optimized. Windows probably could get there, but then that would mean a lot less compatibility. So that's why Windows is that's why it's used in like enterprise networks and everything, because it's so compatible, which comes with its own challenges. Yeah, I guess they could do it for their Surface machines. But I guess it comes down to is, do they need to do it, Jay? Apple's business model and why they charge you more, or at least that's what they're explaining. Like, you're paying for the Apple ecosystem. You're paying that Apple tax for that optimization and making sure that everything works well together. But so you're paying more for ease of use. But then the problem is, right, like when Mac blows up, like when something goes wrong with Mac, you run into limitations, even as like an end user, of how deep you can go. So, yeah, you're effectively only paying for the ecosystem. Yeah, you are. I mean, yeah. I can tell you, the majority of like my Windows laptops all definitely wore out much quicker than my old Mac. But yeah, Jay, I think we're doing well. We're coming up to the end here. I'll leave it open. I'm not going to start the next lab actually, because I kind of want to give some room over here, maybe answer some Q&A on kind of what we covered. But just to recap, so we kicked off SOC 100. We did a little bit of a walkthrough about the course and everything, and we went through about a third of Windows operating system. I think we can finish up all of it tomorrow. I think we can do the rest in a 4-hour stream tomorrow, but we'll see. We might have... I scheduled 3 days for Windows and the intro, because the command line is going to get a little iffy for people that are still going through it and learning. So I'll take my time. We'll see. But I'm pretty sure tomorrow we can just do... We'll see how it goes. So for general chat now... So yeah, CI is never going to switch to iPhone. MacBook, I feel you. So I only ended up with an iPhone initially because I wanted the Apple Watch. So I could like go running and stuff and all that. And then you need an iPhone. So Razva, yes, tomorrow is also 4 hours. 10 a.m. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. East. Oh, I just realized I could pin messages. I should have done that. Jeez, way earlier on. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good call over there, Karina. So yeah, it's the ARM processor that is really making the battery life so well used. But that's why Windows has, excuse me, that's why Windows has moved over there now too. They finally brought out ARM. ARM uses a hell of a lot less power consumption, right? Like ARM power consumption versus Intel, or rather x86. Like a percentage. Yeah, I mean, like here's a pretty. This is kind of the same, right? Like, yeah, half the power, twice the performance. This is not Mac per se, but you're gonna find that kind of chart everywhere. Yeah. Is the session recorded and available somewhere? Yeah, Razva. So these are going to go up on YouTube after. Also a couple follows. Thanks for that as well too. Digitalk. Yeah, Gun, you were there earlier. SGA. Yeah, these are going to go up on YouTube after. And then they're going to be inside the course as well too. Inside of these recorded streams. So Karina, you still have a MacBook from 2007. Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Like when you really have the ability to be so involved through the entire production, you just you have that ability to have devices that last a long time. Is it possible the same level of administration of CMD? Oh yeah, totally. So crosses, wait till we get to the here. I'm gonna go to SOC100. Wait till we get to the Windows Enterprise Administration. We're gonna do everything through Server Manager, but then we're gonna do everything over with PowerShell and make some automation. So much faster than using Active Directory like the User Center and such. Yeah, KSJ, I'm gonna look after the stream and get you set up. Jay, your responses are always good. Yeah, system on chip. Yeah. PowerShell is going to show the true power of administration of Windows. Yeah, so PowerShell is a scripting language built solely for the purpose of administering Windows and Windows domain and enterprise networks. And like that is it. That is its sole intentional design. You could definitely do more with it. I don't think it's worth doing more with it. You should use like purposeful languages for purposeful things. But you're gonna see, like once you get to PowerShell, you can fly through all this stuff and automate in scripts. It's gonna be really cool. Can't wait. Will the stream be recording, posting the course? Yes, it will, Cash. Yeah. Well, thanks, CI. Yeah, PowerShell really is powerful. It's just the problem that I guess I have with PowerShell that I've always said is that its structure and design, like it doesn't follow the Unix philosophy. And I think that's really what bothers me so much about it. Like if you look at the way Linux is designed in and out, and we'll get to that. But essentially everything is so translatable and transferable to one another, whereas PowerShell is like learning an entirely new different language and way of doing and thinking, that it's not translatable to what you've done before. And that really puts a lot of friction in learning the language. And it's very verbose. So I'm going to talk about that. There's some cons to it, but if you can get over those cons, then PowerShell is actually quite good for automating and getting through Windows network related needs. Like from an IT perspective, PowerShell is awesome. Yeah, they wanted to make Bash, you know, like they wanted their own shell, they wanted their own scripting language. Because CMD is really limited. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, Jay, you thought it was the only one who found PowerShell a little more complex? No. Honestly, I haven't found anyone. Yeah, Bash forever. The people that I've always worked with always found PowerShell much more difficult to start off with, but then it's easier to master. Whereas Bash is the opposite. Like what? It's Bash is harder to start with. Other way around. PowerShell is harder to start with, easier to master. Bash is easier to start with, harder to master. Because once you start really, like, you can do some crazy things with Bash. Pretty cool. PowerShell, once you get over the syntax and the way the language is used and structured, it's not hard, but getting there is kind of annoying. We're not using Next, Kim. Honestly. Are you talking about the core stack? This is a learning platform that it's not ours. And the website it's a HubSpot hosted website. We've transferred that off. But yeah, no, we looked into, that was part of the discussions we had early on with core stack, was just, seeing what they're doing, how they're making everything, and it's been really good. Quite confident in what they've been able to offer. This is an awesome learning platform. Like, it's so easy for me to go inside here and interact with all this stuff. And to build content. Jay, I think, yeah, grep, cut, awk, and a bunch of piping for things is, yeah, grep. So, grep, cut, awk, ls. Honestly, that's like the bulk of what I really need to use. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really pops up. I mean, egrep, sure. I'm including grep in all of it. Yeah. We're gonna dive in all that stuff in the Linux module. Yeah, so DT, yeah, exactly. That's Doug. PowerShell is useful for later. Yeah, zombie commands. Yeah, like PowerShell is really good for managing, administering, and compromising Windows. It's really good for that. All of those things. Yeah, but cool. Yeah, coming up. Thanks everyone for this is the first stream, so this is SOC100-1. Yeah, it was awesome. I had a really good time with everyone here today. I thought it was really fun. A lot of good interaction. I like this format. It works well. And it's just immediately recorded after too, which is nice. And you guys can take clips if you want. So thanks again for day one, SOC100-1. We've gotten up to user counts. We've got a long way to go. We're going to keep doing this 2 days a week. Take a look at the stream calendar to see when we're scheduled. So we got next weekend, and then we're actually having a break. There's no class that week. And then we got a whole bunch of SOC 1 to go. And then SOC 100-2 kicks off on December 7th. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Hit me up in Discord, and I'll get you, KS and the others, get you sorted out with account access and stuff. But awesome, yeah. Thank you again so much, everyone, for attending. I hope you really enjoyed and learned a lot. I think people are going to be thinking about that kernel talk for a while. we kind of went a little deep on that earlier, but I'm glad we did. So, yeah. Thanks again, everyone. Have yourself a good rest of your Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Get your coffees ready. Let's do this. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.